direct motions first before we get into the religious-based defense motion. All right, the motion ordering the prosecution to co-create a glossary of terms to be given to the jury at start of trial or as soon as possible. It was a motion filed by Ms. Elise on November 17, 2015. I reviewed the motions. Did the state file a written response?
We have not yet filed a written response, Judge.
Do you have an oral response?
There will be through the course of the trial, terms will come up, and those terms will be defined by the various detectives. I believe there is at least a glossary of some of the terms referenced in Ms. Elise's motion. I don't believe anything beyond what will be elicited from testimony is necessary.
Please.
Well, Your Honor, this has been about words the entire time. As soon as you take our words used commonly for thousands of years by these religious traditions and used by everyone in the temples and schools, as soon as you apply their words, we become criminals. As soon as we use our words, there's some indication of our intent. And so I feel, rather than having the jury struggle, that there's just a few key words, and I have identified them, that if they had the Black's Law Dictionary, if it's available, then the American Standard Dictionary, if it's available, and then if any specialized words must be defined by either specialized group, those would also be supplied. And I'm not even sure, I was doing the research, I'm not sure there's any specialized words there. I think we're going to find them in, what their argument is, let the jury figure it out as we go. My argument is, Your Honor, I need them to hear my words, and then they will understand my intent. And having it come piecemeal and haphazard is just going to allow the prosecution to make their case with words that were never in my mouth, never in my intention. And I think the jury deserves to have a simple glossary, since there are specialized law enforcement terms and specialized temple terms. I just think it would be in the interests of clarity and judicial economy and understanding to provide that glossary as soon as possible. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Well, I am going to deny the motion. Ms. Elise, you are welcome to create your own glossary throughout the testimony of the witnesses who appear. There is an easel, and if you want to keep a glossary and move it into evidence at the end of the trial, the court will rule. But I am not inclined to give a definition of these terms. These are commonly used terms, and they are subjective in nature, and there may be certain witnesses who testify they have one meaning and another witness will testify something else. It would be a comment on the evidence without me having even heard the context within which these terms will be used, or the court to give a definition. So I'm going to deny your motion at this time. All right, the next motion is...
May I have a clarity, Your Honor?
Yes.
That's what you did say I can do. So I can put my glossary up and leave it up whenever it's my turn on the...
No, what I said is if you want to create a glossary, if during the testimony of witnesses you have certain witnesses testify that a certain term means something, you can write it on the easel, and you can keep that. If you want to use that later in the trial for some purpose or submit some document, then you can move it into evidence, and the court will consider whether or not it should be admitted.
So I will not be able to give anything in writing to them about my words?
Well,
At any...
not in advance of testimony.
Okay. Okay. So any glossaries that exist from discovery, I could begin using right away, because they're part of, like if it has to do with someone's, like for example, Detective Campbell did receive that glossary. So as soon as she begins to testify, I could bring the glossary forward.
If you lay appropriate foundation, I don't know what the objections may be, but you would have to lay appropriate foundation to bring in any document. So I'm not going to rule in advance, because I don't know whether or not you will be able to lay that foundation and whether or not it will even be relevant. So we'll have to see as we go along.
Your Honor, I am stunned. How are my words not relevant? I am so stunned how my words are irrelevant. Please help me understand, and I'm not trying to be rude.
You misunderstood what I said. your words clearly are relevant, but I don't know what your words are going to be because right now we're starting with a blank slate. There is no evidence, so I cannot give them a glossary of terms, nor can you give them a glossary of terms because they have no context for understanding that terminology. That's why we have examination of witnesses and cross-examination of witnesses so that you can establish relevant facts for the jury. And I'm not going to rule in advance about whether or not the testimony of a witness on a particular topic is relevant or not. That's why you have objections. You'll object, and I will rule accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
I understand.
The next motion is the motion to allow defense to be called by her proper title during trial proceedings. In this motion, Ms. Elise asked the court to refer to her as Dr. Elise. I'm going to deny this motion as well. In this courtroom, everyone is Mr. or Ms., and you are Ms. Elise. You may certainly explain to the jury your background, but it is not appropriate for me to, or anyone in here to call you Dr. Elise. You are Ms. Elise because you are a defendant in a criminal case. So that motion is also denied. All
Thank you,
right,
Your Honor.
let's move on to all right, the entrapment motion was previously ruled upon, so that one is finished. We do have the Bliss motion and the Project Rose and Project Dignity motion, which I believe we decided would be heard after the court ruled on the religious-based defenses motion. All right. The state filed a motion for clarification back on October 13th. The defense filed a motion to establish defendant's right to proclaim her religion as essential to her defense. This morning I was provided with a response to state's motion to preclude religious defense. And I have reviewed the state's motion in limine to preclude any religious-based defenses and motion to exceed page limits that was filed back in June of 2013. I have reviewed the transcript of November 9, 2012 and December 19, 2012, at which time Judge Welty heard oral argument on that motion and ruled. Okay, so let's hear from the state first on these motions.
Your Honor, the state's position is that following what Judge Welty has decided and what this court has said would apply, Ms. Elise can certainly elicit testimony or testify herself as to the facts and circumstances surrounding her presence at the temple. We understand that Ms. Elise her position is that this was her religion. The state's focus in this case is on what went on inside the specific transformation chambers and what went on between the goddesses who worked there and the seekers who came in, and those interactions, and that's the focus of what the state's case and our position is. That's the focus of what this trial is about. It is not about the religion practiced by the Phoenix Goddess Temple. It is about what went in on those within those transformation chambers. It doesn't matter from the state's perspective, and what we're arguing now. I know that Ms. Elise is going to reference what the county attorney may have said or what previous deputy county attorneys have said. The focus of this trial is what went in. Was there an exchange of sex for money? It doesn't matter what her religion is. It doesn't matter what anyone's religion. It could have been a Catholic practice. The fact is, our burden is to show that there was exchange of sex for money, and that's what the focus of this trial needs to be, and not going down into this rabbit hole of everything Miss Elise wants to talk about, Mary Magdalene, and all of the practices. She could talk about why she serves. She could talk about that it's her church. but that does not, that is not what the focus of the trial, and we'd ask that you would follow the motions as filed, Judge.
Okay. Ms. Elise.
Your Honor, and gentlemen of the prosecution, Detective Campbell, we're in agreement that religion does not allow a person to break the law. What we're not in agreement about is what happens when a government agency decides that a church is doing something that it thinks is illegal. And there is a copious amount of state law which takes precedent over these generally applicable laws that says that they have a responsibility to use levels of judicial scrutiny. They're supposed to provide a compelling interest in why they're going to interfere in these very private ceremonies. They're supposed to show harms to property or life. They did not. When they've been given a chance to talk to the press, they say something like, or somebody did, I will just say that it has been presented in the press like this by a law professor. If you murdered someone, you couldn't get away with it because it's your religion to sacrifice people. I'm here to say, Your Honor, that's a ridiculous comparison, and this was a place of healing where only consensual activities were happening. And they just leapfrogged over statutes which instruct them in what to do if they see a church doing something that they don't like. And all the statutes have been listed, as well as all of the statutes are present. And they just leapfrogged over it. And this is where we get to the Catholic bias, because Mr. Montgomery, now after sitting through the jury selection, 12 to 15 people had decided I was guilty from the press coverage. From the press coverage. His oath of office, Mr. Montgomery's oath of office is he is not to color it like that. He arranged for the press to be there so that everybody would be perp walked. This was not treated like a normal escort agency. He was incensed and said in his press release, Your Honor, it is despicable for people to use religion to hide a crime. And I'm going to say it is despicable to use the power of office and ignore every protection that has been put into place to protect religious freedom in the state of Arizona. We are leading the way, allegedly, in how much we protect a land use, how much we protect ceremony, how much we say that government should stay out of charter schools, etc. And yet all of that body of law was not applied because Mr. Montgomery's Catholic doctrine does not allow sexuality could be healing. It's only for married procreation. Mr. Montgomery's doctrine does not allow women to be ordained into spiritual authority. Mr. Montgomery's head of his church, and I presented all the information about the Knights of Columbus and how he is a 4th degree Knight of Columbus, which means he has publicly vowed to serve the Vatican in all ways and to implement Vatican policy into public life whenever possible. And you don't get to the 4th degree without being publicly out and proud Catholic and a Catholic man. And Your Honor, I'm going to direct you again before we get rid of this Catholic conspiracy that April of 2010, the Vatican issued, different Pope, thank you, Benedict not Francis, issued what's called a papal bull about the most grave sins. And in that 2010 statement to the world, which set off a reaction, of course, that attempting to ordain women into spiritual authority is the equivalent grave sin of pedophilia. Okay? So you've got a man in charge, just newly into office. Then we get this horrible article that no one ever allowed us to have a public reply, shut down our response. We were not able to do any kind of public reply. And so I'm going to quote a couple statutes that are very applicable here. And this is not around the laws of churches, which is all I've ever done. You know what happened when I moved here, gentlemen? I did.
Miss Elise, you need to direct your comments to the court and not to the prosecutors. This is oral argument.
I apologize.
Ms. Elise, I want to give you every opportunity to say what you need to say, but I do want to perhaps refocus you.
Yes, I'm going to quote some statutes about
You're claiming
right now.
that this was a Catholic conspiracy and a conspiracy by the county attorney. However, this matter was taken to a grand jury. The grand jury returned these charges. So
Your
these
Honor, may I repeat that?
hold on, please don't interrupt. The grand jury returned the charges. We are here for a jury trial
Yes.
on these charges.
Yes.
So you are starting with this jury. The state is obligated to present their evidence, and you may cross-examine their witnesses and challenge their evidence. That's your right in this proceeding. The court has already considered the grand jury transcript, and no motion to remand was granted. So
And Your Honor,
unless you can show that there was some inappropriate influence being exerted by the county attorney or some other Catholic official on the grand jury, and you don't have any evidence like that. So your arguments about what happened with regard to this conspiracy aren't relevant to these charges. So I'm
what about
unclear.
the action of bias, Your Honor? I withdrew conspiracy, and I actually said in this courtroom that I withdrew conspiracy and said, no, Your Honor, it's doctrine. And then you said, okay, show me bias. And you saw the bias right here. People who withdrew from jury service because their belief system said that a woman couldn't lead a church or that sexuality couldn't be sacred.
Well, Ms. Elise, that happens in every single case where there's been media coverage. There are a number of jurors who have listened to the coverage and they feel they cannot separate what they've heard from what they will learn in this courtroom, and that's not unusual. I don't believe that there were any greater numbers of those jurors who indicated they couldn't sit as a jury in this case and in many other cases that I've impaneled juries for. So
Okay.
I
So I
don't.
have to speak to the Catholic thing one more.
All right, go ahead.
I modeled, and my sister will testify to this, I modeled the Mystic Sisters on the priesthood of the Catholic Church and combining it with what happens with nuns. And you know what I found out? Only nuns take vows of poverty, not priests. But I modeled everything I did. The Transformation Chamber from 2005 was modeled on the Catholic confession booth. My vows were modeled on priest vows to the Vatican. I literally copied the most successful church in the world and said, if the men can have this for their patriarchal religion, praying to God, I can certainly claim it for myself with the mother. And when I presented that information to the IRS, I was given my vow of poverty from 2005 to 2006. They let me be. They let my sisterhood be. And prior to that, the IRS would not question any Catholic that said they had a vow of poverty, but they questioned every other religion. And from 2006 forward, you will find that they stopped doing that. So I have my status, and my status is deeply entwined with the Catholic religion because I used it as my model. And regarding the the bris ceremony, I have had counsel by Jewish goddess people where we talked deeply about male circumcision and why it had to happen as a covenant. And we talked deeply about how that ceremony is similar in that I am doing a life-altering ceremony with someone if their naked body and their private, their body. But in our ceremony, no one loses a body part. In our ceremony, it's consenting adults. And Your Honor, I do compare those things in my mind, and I've had talks with girlfriends, and I will bring you a rabbi who will talk about why that is protected by law, even though someone loses a body part. It's called religious tradition. So when they're trying to strip me from aligning, you know that most of my religion I learned from men and male societies as well. So I'm not against any of this, but when you try to take away, you're not going to be able to take away the Jewish part, the Catholic part, because I learned how to have a church from those people.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so Ms. Elise, as I have said many times, and as Judge Welty stated in his order dated December 19, 2012 in the minute entry, the court is not going to present you from presenting the facts and circumstances regarding your presence and activities involved in the organization. You may do that. That's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss today your right to proclaim your religion as a defense. And that also was ruled upon by Judge Welty when he said that he granted the state's motion to preclude religious-based defenses. Now,
Your Honor, I have to say, though, that I was not my own attorney when that happened. I was in Rule 11.
I understand, but for the reasons that were discussed during oral argument, I believe that ruling is correct with regard to what I know right now. You may re-argue this issue after the case has been presented, depending on what I hear. Okay. However, Judge Welty made it very clear in his discussions that the evidence would be limited and it must be relevant to these charges and the charges that are pending. Now, the state has asked the court to limit the presentation of the facts and circumstances at the temple to the time frame the crimes were alleged to have been committed, January 1, 2010 to September 6, 2011. And
I'm sorry, to what date? September 6th?
6, 2011. And the court agrees that that is the time frame. However, you may be permitted to provide some background information about the church prior to these events occurring. I'm not going to rule in advance about whether or not certain evidence may or may not be relevant or admissible because I haven't heard the evidence the state's going to present at this time. But I believe the state is correct that you should be limited to presenting evidence during this time frame. If you want to present additional evidence, then you're going to need to let me know in advance before you present it to the jury so that I can give the prosecutors an opportunity to object outside the presence of the jury. Anything that occurred after the dates that are alleged in the indictment are likely not relevant and will likely be precluded. If you intend to present any evidence of that nature, then you need to approach the court and let me know, and I'm going to give the prosecutors an opportunity to object. It is not my intention to have a script. I don't know what the evidence will be at trial, so it's very difficult for me to preclude or rule in advance. So you're going to have to object as we go along, and we'll see where we end up. But
Thank you, Your Honor. And I'll just say this last part, and I will not talk about it again. I am now standing here as a living human being, not giving up my constitutional rights, my Arizona rights, my tribal rights. I am going to go on record. You guys can steamroll over me and say it doesn't apply. They never proved harms. They never used judicial scrutiny when they looked at my church. And I just want to go on record to the world that the Constitution lives only when we take a stand for it, and I will continue to do so, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Elise, just so that you're clear, this is a courtroom, and when you were conducting oral argument, you're addressing your arguments to me, not to co-counsel and not to the folks seated in the back of the courtroom and not to the camera. All right, so please address the court when you're speaking in the courtroom. All right, so let's move on.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Let's move on to the next motion to dismiss with prejudice due to prosecutorial misconduct and selective prosecution. All right, and I've reviewed the state, reviewed that motion, which was filed on October 5, 2015, and the state's response, which was filed on October 13, 2015. I didn't see a reply.
Your Honor, I did have a reply, and it was, and actually on that motion I said, motion withdrawn, and then I asked to sanction them instead of dismissing the case, just to sanction them for wasting the court's time when they have evidence that there was no commerce at the temple and evidence that the church is real. And I am going to go on record that everybody knows that what was exactly said in that grand jury indictment, the grand jury was led to believe that we were not a church because the prosecutor, Rebecca Browder, asked the lead case agent, I don't know which one, they purported to be a church on their website. Yes. Did you receive any documentation from the church? No. And I'm going to say right here again, Your Honor, to you, that had I been given the chance to provide church documentation, the whys and hows of what we do, I would have gladly came. A least restrictive means would have been to ask for that paperwork and subpoena the leading people to come down to this courthouse and talk about it. But no, we had to have SWAT teams, battering rams, public humiliation, the leading legal mind in our county saying this is not a real church. And by the way, the law says that you don't get to decide if you're in government office if religion is real. You only get to decide if people are living it sincerely. And they've been unwilling to look at that as well. But we'll get to that in witness testimony. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so Ms. Elise, just so the record is clear, you have withdrawn your motion to dismiss with prejudice. Is that correct?
Yes, and instead I filed another motion to sanction them financially for wasting this court's time, wasting public monies. I feel going forward that that would be appropriate if you look at all the prosecutorial misconduct. I was put in jail. Their own people said that my bond should be $4,800 to $9,800. I went into jail at Maricopa with a $1 million bond on my head. If that is not malicious prosecution, I don't know what the definition would be.
Okay. Well, Ms. Elise, I understand what you're saying. For the record, the motion to dismiss with prejudice filed on October 5, 2015 is deemed withdrawn. At the
Motion to
request,
sanction in its place.
excuse me, at the request of the defendant, the motion for sanctions. I don't have a copy of it in front of me, so I haven't seen it, but you're telling me that what you're asking the court to do is to sanction the state for wasting county resources. Is that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Yes.
Well, that motion is denied. That motion for sanctions is denied.
Thank you.
All right.
It's in public record, and there will be a conversation about it, I'm sure. Thank you, Your Honor.
So now let's move on to the motion in limine regarding bris ceremonies. Did the state wish to be heard on this motion?
As pointed out in the motion, Your Honor, Ms. Elise is intending on putting forth what is essentially a selective prosecution argument. Our position is that's inappropriate for this jury. It's going to do nothing but confuse the jury. And then certainly what happens in some other ceremony is wholly irrelevant to specifically whether or not there was an exchange of sex for money within the transformation chambers of the Queen's Goddess Temple. We ask that you grant the state's motion. Thank you, Judge.
Ms. Elise?
Your Honor, men have ruled religion for at least 2,000 years. They have a covenant where they take a baby boy 8 days old and cut away a part of his body as an act of a covenant with their Creator. Your Honor, my covenant to act on behalf of the mother is no less sacred, no less valid. It may be less valid in the eyes of this community because we accept the bris ceremony. I have a rabbi who's willing to come, so why don't we just let it rest, and I will present the rabbi and we will discuss that covenant so that I then have a groundwork to discuss my covenant, which involves things that would otherwise be socially unacceptable. Taking a baby boy, Your Honor, cutting him, someone paying. I asked my rabbi friend about this, and I said, can you tell me about your donation for the bris ceremony? She said, oh, you mean my fee? And I said, you call it a fee? She said, yes, it's a fee. It's on my website. So I do believe there's some relevance here because we are talking about the genitals. To do the bris ceremony, you actually have to get the little wand erect. So there's even like a little, I mean, if you did that exact thing outside the robes of the office of rabbi, you would be thrown into jail for child molestation, for mutilation of an infant. The parents would be arrested for arranging it. But this is all protected in the eyes of the law due to tradition. And the only difference is my tradition has been snuffed out by patriarchal religions. So my traditions are all underground, hidden, and disrespected.
All right, so Ms. Elise, what is the purpose of eliciting testimony about the bris ceremony? Why is it, excuse me, why is it relevant? For what purpose?
If that, what I just said doesn't help understand why it's relevant, I'm talking about a ceremony that takes place in a private religious setting, that they never go and rescue that baby. If I called and said, please go stop them from cutting the next baby that's going to be in a bris ceremony, they wouldn't do it. Why, Your Honor? Respect for tradition, respect for the Jewish faith. They have no respect for the goddess. Zero. And this goes back to Catholic bias, because the Catholic community as a whole understands the doctrine that women are not equal disciples in Christ. They must never be allowed to speak on behalf of the Creator. And if they never speak on behalf of the Creator, they can't speak to immorality around sex. And women are the keepers of what is sacred in sex. So to say that it has no relationship when we're talking about genitals, covenants with God, my covenant with Goddess, I think it's entirely relevant. And from a purely statistical situation, this person will testify that she does indeed receive requested amounts of money. Requested. She doesn't take a generic offering of any amount for her bris ceremony. She asks for a specific amount, And I said, what if they can't give you the amount you're asking? She says, I allow them to make payments. Sometimes I just work with them. Exactly what we did in our temple. We would work with people. So I'm going to say that it's extremely relevant because I model my church activities off of the most successful churches and synagogues, mosques, and temples.
Okay, so 2 questions.
Yes.
You're not going to argue selective prosecution, but you intend to use this as evidence to show that what was going on at the temple is no different from other religious ceremonies that are
It may
conducted.
appear to be strange to the public, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to rule on whether or not that will be admitted because I haven't heard the state's evidence. So I'm going to sustain the objection on the ground of selective prosecution. If you intend to bring in this evidence to argue that your church is being selectively prosecuted, I don't think that's relevant, and I think under 403, it's confusing to the jury. So I won't allow you to bring it in for that purpose. However,
Perhaps we can let them draw their own conclusions.
well,
Because I do need a rabbi in here. That's the closest thing to
Ms.
what I
Elise,
have.
it may be relevant for another purpose. However, I'm going to rule today that you cannot inquire of any witnesses about their knowledge of the bris ceremony without first approaching the court, and I will rule based upon whatever evidence that particular witness has presented on direct if you want to ask on cross. If you intend to bring a witness in during your case, then we can talk about that and the purpose of their testimony, what they're going to say. So you're not going to be allowed to ask any questions without first approaching the bench about this bris ceremony, because I'm not going to allow any testimony if your purpose is to argue that you are being selectively prosecuted, and this is an example. Okay? Just so you're clear about
Okay,
that.
I do get that, but I'd like to ask the state to please present the evidence that I'm not being selectively prosecuted. There must be some evidence that I'm not being selectively prosecuted.
Well, there may be a motion that should have been filed or could have been filed, but that motion isn't before the court, and so I'm not going to hear that at this time, and it isn't
No, that
some,
was filed in multiple motions, that I have been selectively prosecuted because they don't go after porn shoots. They let all the porn people pay their license and tax and let them shoot and do sexual conduct for a fee arrangement. They let bris ceremonies go on with paid cuttings. And this is relevant because this is selective prosecution. Oh, yes, it is. And I did put that motion before the court.
well, it's not going to be heard by the jury, so that's where we are.
Why is that, Your Honor? Why can't they hear selective prosecution? Is that like a civil matter?
Because it isn't relevant to their decision. Their decision is to listen to the evidence and to apply the facts to the law. So that is not going to be something that they are going to be deciding whether or not you are being selectively prosecuted.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so let's go back to the state's motion in limine regarding Project Rose and Project Dignity. Does the state wish to be heard on this motion?
The background of that motion filed by the state is specifically that in questioning of various detectives and other law enforcement, Ms. Elise alluded to the fact that the Phoenix Goddess Temple was, again, selectively prosecuted versus how the Phoenix Police Department, and specifically the Vice Unit, deals with people who are arrested in the context of programs like Project Rose, Project Dignity, and how they're given diversion. So the state's argument in terms of Project Rose, Project Dignity, and Ms. Elise talking about that is specifically to show, or her belief that the Phoenix Goddess Temple was selectively prosecuted versus what is done with other women in the context of Project Rose, Project Dignity. And on the basis that there has been no prima facie showing that the Equal Protection Clause has been violated, there's been no showing, as the court stated, there's no specific motion regarding selective prosecution, and that's not within the purview of the jury. We'd ask you to grant the state's motion. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, Ms. Elise, why is the Project Rose and Dignity programs relevant for the jury?
Your Honor, it's relevant because the prostitution states that statute ARS 13-321115 describes, culpable mental states are required by Arizona law When engaging in statutory interpretation, we give words and phrases their ordinary meaning unless it appears from the context of the statute or from the act of which the statute is a part that a different meaning is intended. I'm going to say that when I first moved here, Your Honor, I looked at the fact that they, and I'm saying the City of Phoenix, the County of Maricopa, have for over, I think, 2 decades, taken in contracts to rehabilitate prostitutes. And the Catholic Church, Catholic Charities, for over 20 years, it's close to 30 years, I believe, they have had a contract, a direct relationship, a contractual relationship, where the Maricopa County prosecutors, the City of Phoenix Police Department work with, and the correctional system, they work with the Catholic Charities to rehabilitate prostitutes. And in this program, they give some job training, they help give them an outfit for interviews. I'm not sure exactly, it's a 40-hour plus program if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to say that I had a competing church and a competing social welfare program that was being funded by our donors, where I took in women who did not have a place to live, did not have anyone believing in them, needed rehabilitation, and they were told that what they'd been through, the sex abuse, incest, rape, what they'd been through, had meaning in the realm of the mother. It meant that they could work through that and become a healer. And those women, my program, I would like to side by side compare the program. And I'm going to say that what goes on with the Dignities and the Project Rose is an exact picture of the City of Phoenix and Maricopa County's mindset about prostitutes, prostitution, prostitution rehabilitation. And this is a competing program, Your Honor. We were rated September 7th, and Project Rose launched with Detective Gallagher out front saying this is a holistic approach for prostitution, and they take 100 cops and just go sweep up and arrest a bunch of women and take them in handcuffs down to the church. And if you say that that has no relevance, when all that stuff was happening in the period of 2010, when I was having my first priestess path, where the women that came to us for rehabilitation were being trained and ordained as priestesses, boy, is it relevant, because Detective Gallagher actually did his program and announced his program. And you know what? There may be no actual threads of connection, but when it's all taken together, the totality of circumstance, there's no way that anybody could say that this Catholic powerhouse, the contract with the city, the contract with the county to rehabilitate prostitutes, it is absolutely relevant in this case because that is a city and county sanctioned program of rehabilitation, and I feel it's my right, duty, and responsibility to do a side-by-side comparison of that program and our program. And also, these two witnesses, Tammy Hardman and Dominique, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, who are the leaders of these programs, they're going to give this court and the jury a very concise description of the mindset of a prostitute. We need a description, Your Honor, of the mindset of a prostitute. And in fact, we might need more than one since it's not defined in state statute. So these people are established to come in and show us the community standards and the mindset of what goes on in the city of Phoenix with prostitutes. And I think it's absolutely applicable in every possible way.
Okay, Ms. Lewis, it's a lot of information that you just provided. Let me
That's
just
all
ask.
been in my motion so far. Everything I said was in writing.
Okay, so let me ask some questions.
Okay.
How do you intend to present evidence regarding Project Rose and Dignity?
With Project Dignity and Project Rose, I simply want to show public statements regarding what's happening with the prostitutes, why is the church helping, why does the city, what's the cooperation with the church and the city?
Let me ask it a different way. How are you going to bring in this information? Through a specific witness?
These two witnesses, Your Honor, that were twice we've issued subpoenas, and I guess they're really going to go out this time, for the two women, the woman who actually works with the women on a day-to-day basis and the woman who co-designed the project with Commander Gallagher, which is the Project Rose portion. So Tammy Hardman is for the Dignity program and Catholic Charities, and Dominique Rose Sipowicz is going to be community standards from Arizona Social Work, and she's going to also describe the mindset of a prostitute, the mindset of the women that they try to rescue when they do these programs. Because I'm going to be presenting something very similar, but from the perspective of women should be in charge of this, not men.
So
Catholic Church women are not in charge.
your claim is that Project Rose and Dignity performed a function similar to the function you were
Yes.
providing through the Phoenix Goddess Temple.
Yes, Your Honor, that is what I'm saying. And the programs side by side you would see almost identical, except for we were doing a little more, perhaps.
All right, so let me ask this. At the time that you were operating the Phoenix Goddess Temple, were you aware of Project Rose and Dignity?
Yes, Your Honor. We looked at applying for a
Okay, just yes.
Yeah.
And did
Not
you?
Rose, because Rose actually launched after we were killed.
Okay, so, but you were aware of Project Dignity.
Yes, because they put out solicitations
And
every
is it will it be your testimony that you fashioned the Phoenix Goddess Temple after what you knew about the Dignity Project?
Your Honor, I didn't so much fashion it because the organic needs of the women creates the programs. But what happened was we saw the state, they put out a request for a solicitation for proposals. And we discussed kind of what would happen if we put in a solicitation for proposals to rehabilitate these women. And then we found out there were no grants, that the Catholic Church pays for it in full, so that wouldn't help because we didn't have that much money to have a big program. So that I didn't build my program that way, but when I saw what was happening within the city and the Catholic Church, I actually took that as part of the sum total green light that we were going to be allowed to do what we were doing. And there was a number of signposts along the way that indicated to us that we were being green lighted by state agencies, government agencies, all the way. We thought we were being green lighted. And this was part of how I thought we were part of the community standard. We would be in alignment with community standards and that we would be welcomed because of what we were doing was similar. Yes.
Okay.
We really need to get to the mindset of a prostitute, Your Honor. We really do, because it's not defined in statute.
Okay. There are going to be witnesses who will be called, and you will be able to cross-examine them.
Okay.
And since I haven't heard the state's evidence, it's very difficult for me to preclude you from calling witnesses. However, Project Rose was created after the fact, and the Project Dignity
Your Honor, Project Rose was created during January 1 of 10. He was building it behind the scenes. If you do something in September, you're building the program all year.
Right.
He didn't just do it. He spent 10
All right.
creating it.
What I'm trying to understand is whether or not there is any relevance to the admissibility of these two programs. Based upon what you're telling me, right now I don't see that relevance, but that doesn't mean after I've heard the state's case that I may not have a different perspective. You are not going to be asking any of the state's witnesses about Project Rose or Dignity, is that correct?
No, Your Honor, that's not true.
Okay, so who do you intend to ask about these projects?
I need to talk to Commander Gallagher about Project Rose and Project Dignity, and I'm not sure about Detective Sutherland, Sergeant Sutherland. I'd have to go into, I can restrict my line of questioning to those in authority, because anyone underneath those gentlemen, in terms of hierarchy at work, they would not have been given the chance to look at these issues. So really the issues about community standards around prostitution, the mindset of a prostitute, the mindset of someone who's rehabilitating prostitutes, is absolutely relevant. And Your Honor, both Sergeant Sutherland and Commander Gallagher have both testified in their pretrial interviews that it is in their opinion, it is not possible for any woman to do any kind of sex work ever without having been damaged, and that's why she would do it. They actually couldn't see a woman in her power sharing and training. They literally said that every woman that's caught up in any kind of sex work is a victim, And they literally were telling me that I was a victim and that everyone at the temple was out of choice and a victim. And in fact, that is their official stance, that everyone was a victim because they chose to do sexual healing work. So yeah, it all's in there. This is all the bias, Your Honor.
Okay.
The Catholic bias is strong.
Let me ask, Mr. Leiter, Mr. Sammons, do you intend to elicit any testimony along those lines from Commander Gallagher or Sergeant Sutherland?
Your Honor, it was not our intention, first of all, to elicit that testimony. Moreover, it was not our plan to call either of them in our case in chief.
You do not plan to call them?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, then that makes it much simpler.
Your Honor, they've been subpoenaed and they're on my witness list.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's a different matter.
Yes.
So I'm going to table this motion since you do not intend to raise this issue except through Commander Gallagher, Sergeant Sutherland, and these other two women possibly whom you have not yet subpoenaed. So we'll take this issue up after the state has presented their case.
Just so we're clear, the purpose of the state's motion was informed by Ms. Elise's questioning of Detective Campbell, virtually all the detectives who we are going to call, and her asking questions about Rose and Dignity, and that was what informed the motion in limine. And that, so as I understand, Ms. Elise is not going to be questioning about those programs of witnesses in the state's case in chief.
That's correct, Your Honor, because I have now discovered in the hierarchy of the police department, those types of mindsets, decisions, protocols, structures are decided before they ever get to the people who execute the action. So the mindset aspect is really with those leading people.
All right, so this motion will be tabled until the defense case is presented to the jury. All right, are there any other motions we have not addressed? I think we've discussed everything, but I'm not, there have been so many motions filed. I could have missed one. Is anyone aware of something that I missed that I need to rule on?
Not from the state judge.
I think I ruled on this one. It's called the state's motion in limine to preclude discussion of language arising out of departmental reports. I'm not sure that I did rule on this one because
I believe you did, Your Honor.
I did. Okay.
I don't recall ever seeing that, but okay. I'm continuing to say that words matter, and I am subpoenaing the records regarding police training around the arrest of prostitutes, that type of thing. It's important to me that I understand, Your Honor. They may or may not understand my language, but I really want to understand their language, protocols, and procedures going in. When I've asked about, do you have any specialized training for arresting alleged prostitutes, they kind of said no. I asked if they had any training around the Constitution, either at Police Academy or ongoing at the force. They're like, no, maybe 2-hour class. I mean, what I really got after going through all the pretrial witness interviews is that the Constitution's really off the table with this particular group of people. Like, it's just not addressed. So again, language, free speech, I'm going to claim before Your Honor and everyone here that I must have free speech to defend myself. Any time that they use words, we went through this, Your Honor, in a pretrial discussion, and I've got it in my written motions, that it is absolutely on record that our people say one thing. The detectives listen and take notes. Then they write a summation, and in the summation, they are freely changing the wording, the context, the underpinning motives. They're basically changing it when they write the summation. And so I'm caught in this game of it because we can't just use our words and have our words. I'm caught in this word game where I need to understand their language, their protocols, their words, because I can't even defend myself with just my words. I now have to defend myself with their words.
Okay. Well, that's the purpose of cross-examination. So you'll be allowed to cross-examine all of the state's witnesses, and the court will rule on any objections. All right. Mr. Leiter.
My recollection, Judge, is the court ruled, granted the state's motion limited because we proffered that the information that was going to be presented was not, we were not going to present the departmental report.
Correct.
Ms. Elise, and what this court ruled is Ms. Elise could certainly utilize language that's contained in the DR. When I say DR, I mean departmental report, in her cross-examination of the various witnesses, but each of the detectives is going to testify about what they saw, what they heard. Each of the testifying cooperators is going to testify in their own words. So what is contained in the report is hearsay and can be used in cross-examination, but won't be elicited, the specific language contained in those reports.
Right. So do you understand? You can cross.
Maybe Kyle will help me after.
Okay, so if there is testimony and there's a different term used in the police report, you can cross-examine the witnesses about why one word was used in court and why one word was used in the police report. That's an appropriate question for cross-examination, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, now let's talk about the opening statements. We discussed it at the end of the day yesterday, but I know everyone was tired after jury selection. Is everyone clear about the purpose? Did you have a chance to talk to Mr. Green? You understand the purpose of an opening statement is to give a preview of your case, but not to argue. All right?
I'll do my best, Your Honor.
All right.
And, Your Honor, there was one more thing about our motion to the filming or having access to the footage.
Yes.
They're burning discs. Did you know what happened with that? So that because basically I'm the Goddess Channel. We are the Goddess Channel, and we do want to communicate to the world. So, and I do need to review the daily things because I'm finding taking notes while I'm standing up is kind of hard for me.
Well, it is not ordered, it is not typically ordered that defendants will receive copies of the FTR recordings. The Office of Public Defense doesn't have the funds to do that for all defendants. I already said that I believe that it would be appropriate to give you your opening statement so that you may review that. It may be necessary for you to have that, and from time to time you may ask for an FTR recording of a particular witness to assist you in preparing cross-examination or your case. But I'm not going to order that the court provide those copies to you at no cost every day, unless you can make
It's just burning discs, and they're already burning discs. It's not actually $30 each time because they're already burning discs. In reality, they're just burning a disc. So,
Well, that is, my understanding is that the court doesn't make money on those discs. That's what it actually costs the court to generate those discs, and someone has to pay for
get the
that.
discs for free? If we put in a media application through someone we know in media, do they access it for free?
No, the media has to pay just like everyone else. It's
Okay,
the-
Your Honor, I'll work on fundraising. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Anything else? Or we'll see you at 1:30.
Your Honor, just briefly, I just want the court to recall, I spoke to the court yesterday. I do have that telephonic appearance. It's scheduled to start at 1:15. I'm kind of a little bit at the mercy of the Pinal County judge as to when I get called and how long that hearing will take. So I will be here, but I
We won't start without you. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I know. We keep getting, and they keep telling me that I have to pay for everything. Any filings, they keep.
Oh, counsel, if you want to look at the, Ms. Elise, if you want to look at the indictment to be read to the jury, the charges, you have them. Are there any objections to those?
Just a list of stuff.
the charges that I gave yesterday.
Yeah, here's the list of charges, and they cross out all the Arizona stuff and just put Arizona, Arizona.
No objections?
I don't, I'm sorry.
The clerk did ask me whether or not in count one, you wanted all of those offenses read, and I assumed that I didn't have a motion to amend the indictment, so I said yes on page 10.
I indicated to the clerk that because all of those are part and parcel of the conspiracy statute, they should be read to the jury.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure.
Your Honor, we are having really some issues, administrative payment type issues. in that when we go to we're told that we can take away
Copies of the hearings.
copies,
Of the hearings.
but that we have to, it's kind of like this circular thing, and what everyone says is if you order it, then I can have them. They're basically saying you can have it if it's ordered, that all your court fees are waived. So whenever I go to file, they're like basically I went to file my subpoenas, I was told that there's a committee that will look at my subpoenas before they're issued, before they'll pay the little $27 filing fee, and then they'll maybe issue the subpoenas.
So who told you this? Who told you?
That came from the clerk of court here in this building.
All right.
Emails that I could forward to you what they're saying.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I will put in the minute entry that the court finds that Ms. Elise is representing herself and she is indigent, so it will be ordered waiving all court filing fees for Ms. Elise. Have you had to pay these fees already?
A few, just because I wanted to get it done. Not a lot. I paid, I think, 3 fees of 27, and then I just said, I can't afford this. So
Okay.
that was way long ago, too.
Okay, so we'll make sure that those, from here forward, you won't be paying any filing fees.
Okay. And then is there I believe that, well, no, actually, she just said she can't do that. I would like the court to order that I can receive all of the expert witness evidentiary hearings, because that was only like 6 to 8 total hearings when we had Dr. Ted, who are my star witnesses, Dr. Ted, Dennis Hoff, and of course James Flaming Eagle Mooney. They all gave testimony in April and May of 2014, and they are star witnesses, and I would love to be able to review their footage. So,
And I believe
you guys have transcripts of that, or
I have sent you transcripts previously.
of those?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh wow, I only saw I didn't see the transcripts of that. I apologize. I will go through the emails.
They were sent, and I will. They may be.
Oh, they were discs. Were they discs?
They were discs.
Okay, then I didn't know. But so they're transcripts or they're the video?
Mike, did you transcribe that?
I did transcribe some testimony.
We have transcripts of all 3 of those individuals' testimony. They have been disclosed. If Ms. Elise can take a look to see if she's got the discs. If not, I can redisclose them.
Okay.
Long
I
before-
apologize. I thought they would be like an attachment in my email, so I didn't look on it.
All right, so, but Ms. Elise, the state can't cannot photocopy the transcripts. If there are transcripts, then I will authorize or order the Office of Public Defense to pay for those transcripts, and you'll have to get them directly from the court reporter because the
Should I
state,
get them digitally? Because I don't know that I need them on paper.
you can get them digitally. You can go and,
Sounds like I have them digitally.
I believe she
Actually.
has them digitally. I know that Mike had previously provided them to us. All 3 interviews we have in transcript form. I know they've been disclosed. If she doesn't have them, we will burn her another disc.
okay.
Thank you.
Judge, just with the subpoena issue, is there an investigator involved? I know it seems like Ms. Elise continues to have some struggle with the subpoenas. I thought the court had appointed an investigator and that he could be her go-between in
Yes.
dealing with some of these issues.
Yes, Your Honor, and what happened with that is it took a little while to get that person. When we talked, he said that he's never done a serving of subpoenas, and so that's not part of what he does. He investigates people's addresses and things like that, and that I was to take the filed subpoenas to the Office of Public Defenders. So then when I did that, this very last round, I made a clerical error in that I didn't change the dates. They were typed in late October and the dates were wrong. And then the media, where I'm trying to get what was said in media, I need to do an affidavit. So I didn't what's the word, comport with law. I
Okay,
need to do an affidavit for that. So they're in process.
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Oh. Mike, you already shut down, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do this on the record, but we do have a juror who called in today and said, I'm moving tomorrow. I can't be in court. So it's juror 138. He's juror 17. He's the very last juror we sat yesterday. He's moving. He has a moving truck at his house, and he is not going to be here today. So I assume that there's no objection to us excusing him because he can't be here. I don't even know what to say about that. How many times did we ask him? He didn't volunteer that. Until the very end when he told Randy, as he was walking out yesterday, that he couldn't be here.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so we'll put that on the record.
No.
The record will show the presence of Ms. Elise, Mr. Sammons, and Mr. Leiter. Mr. Green is in the hallway waiting to take a call from another court. He is not yet on the phone. We've left the jury waiting now for 20 minutes. So what I'd like to do is bring them in. We're going to read the preliminary instructions and the charges. Do you waive his appearance for those purposes?
For just the purposes of,
Reading the preliminary jury instructions and reading the charges.
I think that's fine. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, excellent. Then let's bring in the jury. We'll let him know. I told him to let me know the judge wasn't calling. I don't know why he did. Crazy. Penelope County.
You know, if everyone's weird, I've never read it. It's kind of very cool.
For my birthday. But depressing more than help. It's depressing. I thought I consume 2,200 calories a day. I'm only burning 1,500 calories a day.
I took mine off because I was just making me feel worse about myself. So just a reminder of when to take it.
French, not even in like
Good that I said.
4,000. Like
The court has to computer. That's what he's having.
okay.
All rise for the jury.
Go on.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, Mr. Leiter, and Mr. Sammons. Mr. Green will be joining us shortly. Thank you for your patience with us, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for the delay in starting. In your black notebooks, or on top of your black notebooks, there were some preliminary jury instructions. I'm going to read those to you. I invite you to follow along with me. We have a juror who needs hearing assistance. Is that correct? Which juror is that? Yes. Okay, thank you, sir.
That's right. Thank you. Happiness.
While we're waiting for the bailiff to get that hearing device, I will tell you that juror 138 has been excused. All right. Is it working? Can you hear me? Excellent. If at any time you can't hear or if something goes wrong, please raise your hand and let me know. All right, thank you. All right, on to page 2 of the preliminary jury instructions. Now that you have been sworn, I will briefly tell you something about your duties as jurors and give you some instructions. Jury service is an important part of our system of justice, with a long and distinguished tradition in American law. From the beginning, American law has viewed the jury system as an effective means of drawing on the collective wisdom, experience, and fact-finding abilities of persons such as yourselves. While it may be an occasional inconvenience or worse, jury service is an important responsibility for you, one which I am sure you will take seriously. At the end of the trial, I will give you more detailed instructions, and those instructions will control your deliberations. It will be your duty to decide the facts. You must decide the facts only from the evidence produced in court. You must not speculate or guess about any fact. You must not be influenced by sympathy or prejudice. You will hear the evidence, decide the facts, and then apply the law I will give you to those facts. That is how you will reach your verdict. In doing so, you must follow that law whether you agree with it or not. You must not take anything I may say or do during the trial as indicating any opinion about the facts. You and you alone are the judges of the facts. You will decide what the facts are from the evidence presented here in court. That evidence will consist of the testimony of witnesses, any documents and other things received into evidence as exhibits, and any evidence stipulated to by the parties or that you are instructed to consider. You may hear reference to exhibits that are not admitted and are not asked to be admitted. These exhibits are not admitted as evidence. However, the information from them that is testified to by witnesses is evidence that you may consider. You will decide the credibility of the witnesses and weight to be given to any evidence presented in the case, whether it is direct evidence or circumstantial evidence. Direct evidence is a physical exhibit or the testimony of a witness who saw, heard, touched, smelled, or otherwise actually perceived an event. Circumstantial evidence is the proof of a fact from which the existence of another fact may be inferred. You must determine the weight to be given to all the evidence without regard to whether it is direct or circumstantial. Admission of evidence in court is governed by rules of law. I will apply those rules and resolve any issues that arise during the trial concerning the admission of evidence. If an objection to a question is sustained, you must disregard the question, and you must not guess what the answer to the question might have been. If an exhibit is offered into evidence and an objection to it is sustained, you must not consider that exhibit as evidence. If testimony is ordered stricken from the record, you must not consider that testimony for any purpose. Do not concern yourselves with the reasons for my rulings on the admission of evidence. Do not regard those rulings as any indication from me of the credibility of the witnesses or the weight you should give to any evidence that has been admitted. From time to time during the trial, it may become necessary for me to talk with the attorneys out of the hearing of the jury, either by having a conference at the bench when the jury is present in the courtroom or by calling a recess. Please understand that while you are waiting, we are working. The purpose of these conferences is not to keep relevant information from you, but to decide how certain evidence is to be treated under the rules of evidence and to avoid confusion and error. We will, of course, do what we can to keep the number and length of these conferences to a minimum. I may not always grant an attorney or party's request for a conference. Do not consider my granting or denying a request for a conference as any indication of my opinion of the case or of what your verdict should be. Please do not be concerned with what we are discussing at any bench conference we may have. Please respect the privacy of those participating in the bench conference in order to maintain the fairness of the trial. The state has charged the defendant with a crime. The charge is not evidence against the defendant. You must not think that the defendant is guilty just because the defendant has been charged with a crime. The defendant has pled not guilty. The defendant's plea of not guilty means that the state must prove every part of the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. The law does not require a defendant to prove innocence. Every defendant is presumed by law to be innocent. The state has the burden of proving the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. In civil cases, It is only necessary to prove that a fact is more likely true than not, or that its truth is highly probable. In criminal cases such as this, the state's proof must be more powerful than that. It must be beyond a reasonable doubt. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof that leaves you firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. There are very few things in this world that we know with absolute certainty, and in criminal cases, the law does not require proof that overcomes every doubt. If, based on your consideration of the evidence, you are firmly convinced that the defendant is guilty of the crime charged, you must find the defendant guilty. If, on the other hand, you think there is a real possibility that the defendant is not guilty, you must give the defendant the benefit of the doubt and find the defendant not guilty. In deciding whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty, do not consider the possible punishment. If there is testimony in this case about what a defendant said to a law enforcement officer, you must not consider any such statement unless you determine beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant made the statement voluntarily. A defendant's statement to a law enforcement officer was not voluntary if it resulted from the defendant's will being overcome by a law enforcement officer's use of any sort of violence, coercion, or threats, or by any direct or implied promise, however slight. You must give such weight to the defendant's statement as you feel it deserves under all of these circumstances. A defendant in a criminal case has a constitutional right to not testify at trial, and the exercise of that right cannot be considered by the jury in determining whether a defendant is guilty or not guilty. In deciding the facts of this case, you should consider what testimony to accept and what to reject. You may accept everything a witness says, or part of it, or none of it. In evaluating testimony, you should use the tests for accuracy and truthfulness that people use in determining matters of importance in everyday life, including such factors as the witness's ability to see or hear or know the things the witness testified to, the quality of the witness's memory, the witness's manner while testifying, whether the witness has any motive, bias, or prejudice, whether the witness is contradicted by anything the witness said or wrote before trial or by other evidence, and the reasonableness of the witness's testimony when considered in the light of the other evidence. Consider all of the evidence in light of reason, common sense, and experience. The rule of exclusion of witnesses is in effect and will be observed by all witnesses until the trial is over and a result announced. This means that all witnesses will remain outside the courtroom during the entire trial, except when one is called to the witness stand. They will wait in the areas directed by the bailiff unless other arrangements have been made with the attorney who has called them. The rule also forbids witnesses from telling anyone but the lawyers what they will testify about or what they have testified to. If witnesses do talk to the lawyers about their testimony, other witnesses and jurors should avoid being present or overhearing. The lawyers are directed to inform all their witnesses of these rules and to remind them of their obligations from time to time as may be necessary. The parties and their lawyers should keep a careful lookout to prevent any potential witness from remaining in the courtroom if they accidentally enter. The only exceptions to this rule are that each side is allowed to designate one investigator to sit through the trial. An alleged victim is also allowed to sit through the trial even though the victim may testify at trial. As I mentioned earlier, it is your job to decide from the evidence what the facts are. Here are 6 rules on what is and what is not evidence. The record will show that Mr. Green has joined us. Number 1, evidence to be considered. You are to determine the facts only from the testimony of witnesses and from exhibits received in evidence. 2, lawyer statements. Ordinarily, statements or arguments made by the lawyers in the case are not evidence. Their purpose is to help you understand the evidence and law. 3, questions to a witness. A question is not evidence. A question can only be used to give meaning to a witness's answer. 4, objections to questions. If a lawyer objects to a question and I do not allow the witness to answer, you must not try to guess what the answer might have been. You must also not try to guess the reason why the lawyer objected in the first place. 5, rejected evidence. At times during the trial, testimony or an exhibit may be offered as evidence. If I sustain an objection, that testimony or exhibit may not be considered by you for any purpose. 6. Stricken evidence. At times, I may order some evidence to be stricken from the record. Then it is no longer evidence, and you must not consider it for any purpose. At the end of the trial, you will have to make your decision based on what you recall of the evidence. You will not be given a written transcript of any testimony. You should pay close attention to the testimony as it is given. You have been provided with notepads and pens. The court encourages you to take notes during the trial if you wish to do so. Do not let note-taking distract you so that you miss hearing or seeing other testimony. You may use your notes during your deliberations at the end of the trial. Until then, please keep your notes to yourself. During recesses in the trial, you may leave your notes on your seat. Your notes are confidential and the bailiff will protect them. No one will be allowed to read your notes. Whether you take notes or not, you should rely upon your own memory of what was said and not be overly influenced by the notes of other jurors. After you have rendered your verdict, the bailiff will collect your notes and destroy them. Do not be influenced at all by my taking notes at times and working on the computer at times. What I am doing may have nothing to do with what you will be concerned with at this trial. I am now going to say a few words about your conduct as jurors. I'm going to give you some do's and don'ts, mostly don'ts, which I will call the admonition. Do wear your juror badge at all times in and around the courthouse so everyone will know you are on a jury. Each of you has gained knowledge and information from the experiences you have had prior to this trial. Once this trial has begun, you are to determine the facts of this case only from the evidence that is presented in this courtroom. Arizona law prohibits a juror from receiving evidence not properly admitted at trial. Therefore, do not do any research or make any investigation about the case on your own. Do not view or visit the locations where the events of the case took place. Do not consult any source such as a newspaper, a dictionary, a reference manual, television, radio, the internet, or any other electronic media for information. If you have a question or need additional information, submit your request in writing and I will discuss it with the attorneys. Do not talk to anyone about the case or about anyone who has anything to do with it, and do not let anyone talk to you about those matters until the trial has ended and you have been discharged as jurors. This prohibition about not discussing the case includes using email, Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, instant messaging, BlackBerry messaging, iPhones, iTouches, Google, Yahoo, or any internet search engine for any other form of electronic communication for any purpose whatsoever if it relates in any way to this case. This includes, but is not limited to, blogging about the case or your experience as a juror on this case, discussing the evidence, the lawyers, the parties, the court, your deliberations, your reactions to testimony or exhibits, or any aspect of the case, or your courtroom experience with anyone whatsoever until the trial has ended and you have been discharged as jurors. Until then, you may tell people you are on a jury, and you may tell them the estimated schedule for the trial, but do not tell them anything else except to say that you cannot talk about the trial until it is over. One reason for these prohibitions is because the trial process works by each side knowing exactly what evidence is being considered by you and what law you are applying to the facts you find. As I previously told you, the only evidence you are to consider in this matter is that which is introduced in the courtroom. The law that you are to apply is the law that I give you in the final instructions. This prohibits you from consulting any outside source. If you have cell phones, laptops, or other communication devices, please turn them off and do not turn them on while in the courtroom. You may use them only during breaks so long as you do not use them to communicate about any matter having to do with the case. You are not permitted to take notes with laptops, Blackberries, tape recorders, or any other electronic device. You are only permitted to take notes on the notepad provided by the court. Devices that can take pictures are prohibited and may not be used for any purpose. It is your duty not to speak with or permit yourselves to be addressed by any person on any subject connected with the trial. If someone should try to talk to you about the case, stop him or her or walk away. If you should overhear others talking about the case, stop them or walk away. If anything like this does happen, report it to me or any member of my staff as soon as you can. To avoid even the appearance of improper conduct, do not talk to any of the parties, the lawyers, the witnesses, or media representatives about anything until the case is over, even if your conversation with them has nothing to do with the case. For example, you might pass an attorney in the hall and ask what good restaurants there are downtown, and somebody from a distance may think you are talking about the case. So again, please avoid even the appearance of improper conduct. The lawyers and parties have been given the same instruction about not speaking with you jurors, so do not think they are being unfriendly to you. When you go home tonight and family and friends ask what the case is about, remember you cannot speak with them about the case. All you can tell them is that you were on a jury, the estimated schedule for the trial, and that you cannot talk about the case until it is over. In a civil case, the jurors are permitted to discuss the evidence during the trial while the trial progresses. In a criminal case such as this, however, the jurors are not permitted to discuss the evidence until all the evidence has been presented and the jurors have retired to deliberate on the verdict. You may not discuss the evidence among yourselves until you retire to deliberate on your verdict. Therefore, during breaks and recesses, whether you are assembled in the jury room or not, you shall not discuss any aspect of the case with each other until the case is submitted to you for your deliberations at the end of the trial. Again, if you have a question or need additional information, submit your request in writing, and I will discuss it with the attorneys. During the trial, you are not to engage in any conduct that impairs or interferes with your ability to hear and understand the court proceedings. Do not form final opinions about any fact or about the outcome of the case until you have heard and considered all of the evidence, the closing arguments, and the rest of the instructions I will give you on the law. Keep an open mind during the trial. Form your final opinions only after you have had an opportunity to discuss the case with each other in the jury room at the end of the trial. Please advise me in writing immediately if you believe that any juror has violated any provision of this admonition. Before each recess, I will not repeat the entire admonition I have just given you. I will probably refer to it by saying, please remember the admonition, or something like that. However, even if I forget to make any reference to it, remember that the admonition still applies at all times during the trial. If at any time during the trial you have difficulty hearing or seeing something that you should be hearing or seeing, or if you get into personal distress for any reason, raise your hand and let me know. If you have any questions about parking, restaurants, or other matters relating to jury service, feel free to ask one of the court staff. But remember that the admonition applies to court staff, including me, as it does to everyone else, so do not try to discuss the case with court staff. In Arizona, jurors are allowed to ask questions of the witnesses. If you have a question about the case for a witness, write it down, but do not sign it. Before the witness leaves the stand, I will ask if there are any juror questions. If you have a question, I will ask you to hand the question to the bailiff, or you may place it in the wire basket located on the bar in front of the jury box. Does everyone see the wire basket? Yes. And you should have some forms in your notebooks for asking questions. You are to submit the question independently, and you are not to discuss the question among yourselves before submitting it. The purpose of the question is to clarify the evidence that has been presented. It is not to explore theories of your own. Additionally, please review your question before giving it to the court, because the witness may have answered your question after you wrote it down. The lawyers and I will discuss the question. The rules of evidence or other rules of law may prevent some questions from being asked. If the rules permit the question and the answer is available, an answer will be given at the earliest opportunity. When we do not ask a question, it is no reflection on the person submitting it. You should attach no significance to the failure to ask a question. I will apply the same legal standards to your questions as I do to the questions asked by the lawyers. If a particular question is not asked, please do not guess why or what the answer might have been. We will all do our best to move the case along, but delays sometimes occur. These won't be anyone's fault, so please don't hold them against the parties. Delays usually occur because the attorneys and I need to resolve legal matters before these matters may be presented to you in court. The usual hours of trial will be from 10:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Usual trial days are Monday through Thursday. We generally do not have trial on Friday because that day is reserved for other kinds of hearings. However, jurors who are deliberating can choose to deliberate on Fridays. We will take a short recess every mid-afternoon and occasional stretch breaks in place. Unless a different starting time is announced prior to recessing for the evening, you may assume a starting time of 10:30 a.m. for the next day. At the beginning of each day, please wait out in the hall area and the bailiff will come get you and bring you back at the appropriate time. Please do not come into the courtroom or into the back hallway until the staff comes to get you. Criminal trials generally proceed in the following order. First, the prosecuting attorney will make an opening statement giving a preview of the case. The defendant's attorney or defendant may make an opening statement outlining the defense case immediately after the prosecutor's statement, or it may be postponed until after the state's case has been presented. What is said in opening statements is not evidence, nor is it an argument. The purpose of an opening statement is to help you prepare for anticipated evidence. Second, the state will present its evidence. After the state finishes the presentation of its evidence, the defendant may present evidence. If the defendant does produce evidence, the state may present additional or rebuttal evidence. With each witness, there is a direct examination, a cross-examination by the opposing side, and finally, redirect examination. This usually ends the testimony of that witness unless there are juror questions. Third, after all the evidence is in, I will read and give you copies of the final instructions, the rules of law you must follow in reaching your verdict. Fourth, the attorneys will make closing arguments to tell you what they think the evidence shows and how they think you should decide the case. The state has the right to open and close the argument since the state has the burden of proof. Just as in opening statements, what is said in closing arguments is not evidence. Fifth, you will deliberate in the jury room about the evidence and rules of law in an effort to reach a verdict. If you unanimously agree upon a verdict, it will be read in court with you and the parties present. Finally, you will be discharged and released from the admonition. There may or may not be news media coverage of the trial. What the news media covers is up to them. If there is media coverage, you must avoid it during the trial. If you do encounter something about this case in the news media during the trial, end your exposure to it immediately and report to me as soon as you can. If there are cameras in the courtroom during the trial, do not be concerned about them. Court rules require that the proceedings be photographed or televised in such a way that no juror can be recognized. The law provides for a jury of 12 persons in a case such as this. We have more than 12 jurors so that if a juror becomes ill or has a personal emergency, the trial can continue without that juror. At the end of the case, alternate jurors will be determined by lot and a drawing held in open court. Please do not be concerned with who may or may not be chosen as alternates at the end of the case. The rules of law I have charged you with in the past few minutes are preliminary only. At the end of the case, I will read to you and give you a copy of the final instructions of law. In deciding the case, you must be guided by the final instructions. All right. At this time, the clerk will read the charges.
The grand jurors of Maricopa County, Arizona, accused Tracy Elise on this 14th day of March 2013, charging that in Maricopa County, Arizona, count 1, Tracy Elise, on or between the 1st day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, did conspire to commit the offenses of illegal control of an enterprise, illegally conducting an enterprise, operating a house of prostitution, pandering, employee in a house of prostitution, receiving the earnings of a prostitute and or prostitution, money laundering, in conspiring to commit such offenses, the defendants and other conspirators, both known and not unknown to the state, with the intent to promote or aid the commission of offense, did agree with one or more other person that at least one of them or another person would engage in conduct constituting the offenses of illegal control of an enterprise, illegally conducting an enterprise, operating a house of prostitution, pandering, employee in a house of prostitution, receiving the earnings of a prostitute and or prostitution, money laundering. In furtherance of this conspiracy and to effect the objects thereof, defendants and other co-conspirators committed overt acts, including but not limited to one of the enumerated offenses listed in the indictment, counts 2 through 117 of this indictment, in violation of Arizona law. Count 2, Tracy Elise on or between the first day of January 2010 and the sixth day of September 2011, knowingly through racketeering or its proceeds, acquired or maintained by investment or otherwise control of Phoenix Goddess Temple and Enterprise in violation of Arizona law. Count 4, Tracy Elise on or between the first day of January 2010 and the sixth day of September 2011, knowingly operated or maintained a house of prostitution or prostitution enterprise in violation of Arizona law. Count 5, Tracy Elise on or between the first day of January 2010 and the sixth day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 6, Tracy Elise on or between the first day of January 2010 and the sixth day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering in violation of Arizona law. Count 9, Tracy Elise on or between the first day of January 2010 and the sixth day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 10, Tracy Elise on or between the first day of January 2010 and the sixth day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering in violation of Arizona law.
Excuse me. Counsel, Ms. Elise, please approach. Names have been deleted, and was that intentional?
No, Judge, I just noticed that.
Names of these individuals. The cross-document. That's because, unfortunately, that was before they were. So, okay, so I need to know the names of them because it's deleted in ISIS. Take a recess. We're going to take a recess.
That or go into opening statements. I don't know.
I'd rather do it this way. Just, it's quick. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief recess, about 5 minutes, and we will call you back shortly. Please remember the admonition.
All right.
This isn't working at all. I can hear you fine. I can't hear any of them.
What if they need batteries in that?
I can hear it out here. But it was like when he turned down the white noise, I couldn't hear anything.
Okay. I'll check on that. Now we're going to have to cut it in.
I had, that's what I was doing. Counts 1 through 30.
I know.
You don't have counts 1 through 30 in Carpel, or we can pull it up. So you need,
Yeah, it's okay. All right, the record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Okay, counsel, I don't have an unredacted copy of the indictment. Do you have a copy, an unredacted copy, so that you can tell us which names need to be inserted?
We're trying to find one right now, Judge.
Okay.
Judge, we have, from what I can access, it's split into 4 parts. We have 3 of the 4 parts. We will right now work to get counts 1 through 30, which includes the specific missing names, which are.
Okay, so for count 5, for example, is one of the missing names. For count 5.
What we need is the call. Okay.
Right?
We'll call somebody to bring it.
Yeah.
Call one of the secretaries, tell them to grab it. That tornado. just read the
I know.
password.
No, I know.
Can you hear anything out of this? You can't hear this.
But
No, okay. There we go.
Can you hear anything out of this? Can you hear? So you good? Can you hear anything out of this? You're good?
Can't remember the exact number. I don't think I got a card with me. No.
it should be redacted. I don't know why that was redacted.
I guess technically they're named victims. I don't know why. I know.
I know, it's all blank. It doesn't tell us.
Let me look at it.
Number for special crimes.
I don't remember. I'm sorry. Just call the Lonnie Craft. Like in your phone.
That's not that. I don't have display names.
In the,
I'll just call my parents.
She was on the first one.
I might be able to pull it up right now.
Hey, can you give me the number for special crimes?
This is like perfect. It's a situation.
We're ready.
Oh, good luck.
It's all up from here. December 1st. Okay. Did you hit it? It's ready? Okay.
Counsel, let me ask you, do you want the clerk to read count one again? Because now that we have the unredacted copy of one, it has all the names. Do you want all of those names read in the first paragraph of count one?
It has evidence. Was a complete and accurate count.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, so we're just going to start over. And we'll just read it from the beginning, starting with count one. So you just need to take out count three. Clears out. That's it. Count three is out. So you're going to start over and recount one. We're just going to start over and recount one. Two, three is out. We're ready. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience with us. The clerk is going to begin reading the charges again. You are to disregard what you previously heard.
Count 1, Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011. Count 1, Holly Alsop, a.k.a. Debbie Ma, Jessica Angels, a.k.a. Panda, Alex Averill, a.k.a. Xander, Lisa Carlson Oldhams, a.k.a. Astrid, Dawn Colwell, a.k.a. Isabella, a.k.a. Willow, Janet Craven, Tracy Elise, Nicola Hayden, a.k.a. Guinevere, Marilyn Hussey, a.k.a. Sophia, Rachel Laird, a.k.a. Rhea, Sharon A. Monroe, a.k.a. Yemaya, Mary Rube, a.k.a. Persephone, Audrey Starr, a.k.a. Soleil, Amanda Gay Twitty, a.k.a. Ain, Sylvia Wade, and Heidi S. Weinmiller, a.k.a. Isabella, a.k.a. Heidi Summer Weinmiller, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, did conspire to commit the offenses of illegal control of an enterprise, illegally conducting an enterprise, operating a house of prostitution, pandering, employee in a house of prostitution, receiving the earnings of a prostitute and/or prostitution, money laundering, and conspiring to commit such offenses, the defendants and other conspirators, both known and unknown to the state, with the intent to promote or aid the commission of offense, did agree with one or more other person that at least one of them or another person would engage in the conduct constituting the offenses of illegal control of an enterprise, illegally conducting an enterprise, operating a house of prostitution, pandering, employee in a house of prostitution, receiving the earnings of a prostitute and/or prostitution, money laundering. In furtherance of this conspiracy and to effect the objects thereof, defendants and other conspirators committed overt acts, including but not limited to one of the enumerated offenses listed in the indictment, counts 2 through 117 of this indictment, in violation of Arizona law. Count 2, Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly through racketeering or its proceeds, acquired or maintained by investment or otherwise control of Phoenix Goddess Temple and Enterprise in violation of Arizona law. Count 4, Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly operated or maintained a house of prostitution or prostitution enterprise in violation of Arizona law. Count 5, Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Lynn Brewer to lead a life of prostitution, to wit, a.k.a. Gypsy Lynn Lata, a.k.a. Gypsy, in violation of Arizona law. Count 6, Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Lynn Pretty Brewer, a Gypsy Lynn Lata, a.k.a. Gypsy, in violation of Arizona law. Count 9, Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Rebecca Carrera, a.k.a. Aphrodite, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 10, Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or is in the business of money laundering, to wit, Rebecca Carrera, AKA Aphrodite, in violation of Arizona law. Count 13. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Kendra Jones, AKA Chloe, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 14. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Kendra Jones, AKA Chloe, in violation of Arizona law. Count 15. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Elizabeth Lyden, AKA Mary, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 16. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Elizabeth Lyden, AKA Mary, in violation of Arizona law. Count 17. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Marcella Saavedra, AKA Gabby, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 18. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Marcella Saavedra, AKA Gabby, in violation of Arizona law. Count 19. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Leah Sauter, AKA Layla Swan, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 20. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Leah Sauter, AKA Layla Swan, in violation of Arizona law. Count 21. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Sandra K. Brown, AKA Gaia, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 22. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Sandra K. Brown, AKA Gaia, in violation of Arizona law. Count 23. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Stephanie Holmeyer, AKA Iris, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 24. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Stephanie Holmeyer, AKA Iris, in violation of Arizona law. Count 25. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly compelled, induced, or encouraged Jessica DiUto, AKA Bridget, to lead a life of prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 26. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of January 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Jessica DiUto, AKA Bridget, in violation of Arizona law. Count 57. Tracy Elise, on or between the first day of December 2010 and the 6th day of September 2011, knowingly initiated, organized, planned, financed, directed, managed, supervised, or was in the business of money laundering, to wit, Nicola Hayden, aka Guinevere, in violation of Arizona law. Count 106. Tracy Elise, on or about the first day of September 2011, knowingly engaged in prostitution in violation of Arizona law. Count 107. Tracy Elise, on or about the first day of January 2010, knowing that it was intended to be used to facilitate racketeering, made property available to another by transaction, transportation, or otherwise in violation of Arizona law. Count 108. Tracy Elise, on or about the 29th day of May 2010, knowing that it was intended to be used to facilitate racketeering, made property available to another by transaction, transportation, or otherwise in violation of Arizona law. Count 109. Tracy Elise, on or about the 6th day of June 2010, knowing that it was intended to be used to facilitate racketeering, made property available to another by transaction, transportation, or otherwise in violation of Arizona law. Count 110. Tracy Elise, on or about the 23rd day of June 2011, knowing that it was intended to be used to facilitate racketeering, made property available to another by transaction, transportation, or otherwise in violation of Arizona law. Count 111. Tracy Elise, on or about the 4th day of September 2011, knowing that it was intended to be used to facilitate racketeering, made property available to another by transaction, transportation, or otherwise in violation of Arizona law. Signed, a true bill to which the defendant has entered pleas of not guilty.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the parties will give opening statements. Mr. Sands.
If you look it up in the dictionary, it's interesting that you actually will find two different definitions of that word. The first definition of goddess is a female deity. The second definition of goddess is a woman of extraordinary appeal. It's interesting because I anticipate over the course of this trial that Miss Elise is going to try to frame this case and have you look at it under the frame of that first definition. That both she goddesses that worked at the Phoenix Goddess Temple had a religious motivation to what they did inside of the walls of the temple, and that it was in essence essentially a house of worship. On the other hand, the state is going to be asking you as the jury to look at this case under a different purview. They're going to be asking you to look at this case more under the second definition of what a goddess is, a woman of extraordinary appeal. Because as you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, over the course of these several months of trial, the women who worked at the Phoenix Goddess Temple were very, very appealing. I say that because you're going to see that there were lots and lots of men who walked in and out the front door of the Phoenix Goddess Temple on an everyday basis. The problem and the reason why we're here today, ladies and gentlemen, is the why. Why these women were so appealing that men were coming in and out of the Phoenix Goddess Temple. You're going to hear during this trial that the men who walked in and out of the doors of the Phoenix Goddess Temple were having sexual acts performed on them in exchange for money. And we're going to demonstrate for you, ladies and gentlemen, that the Phoenix Goddess Temple was not a house of worship. It was a house of prostitution. So how did this get started? You're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that in February of 2011, the Phoenix New Times produced an article titled "Phoenix Goddess Temple: Sacred Sexuality is More Like New Age Prostitution." And you're going to hear that the Goddess Temple invited in a reporter from the New Times to watch one of their sessions take place. and Rebecca Carrera. Rebecca Carrera was one of the female goddesses or practitioners who worked at the temple. She went by the name Aphrodite. Wayne Clayton was the head of what they refer to as the School of One. You're going to hear about Mr. Clayton, you're going to hear about the School of One, but it's a little bit separate from a lot of what we're going to be talking about during this case. But you're going to hear that the New Times Reporter basically observed a session where Ms. Carrera was basically performing what she did on Mr. Clayton. And you're going to hear that they were both naked during this session, and that Ms. Carrera basically inserted her fingers into his penis and gave him a prostate massage while she masturbated him to the point of ejaculation. You're going to hear after witnessing this is when the Phoenix New Times produced this article. It's important only in the sense of this article is how the Phoenix Police Department became aware of the Phoenix Goddess Temple. This news article is what initiated them to say, we probably need to look into this and find out what's going on here. And you're going to hear that from April of 2011 through September of 2011, the Phoenix Police Department conducted a 6-month investigation into what was happening at the Phoenix Goddess Temple, which initially ended on September 6th of 2011 when they executed search warrants at the temple that day. They did some investigation into the temple in the background when they first started the investigation. You're going to hear it was located at 2728 North 24th Street, which is basically the main cross streets would be 24th Street and Thomas. And you're going to hear during their research that they figured out that the owner or the founder of the Goddess Temple was Tracy Elise, the defendant in this case. You're going to see documentation that she created the Phoenix Goddess Temple, she founded it, and she operated it. She was basically the head person in charge who made the decisions of what happened at the temple. You're also going to hear that they had kind of a sister temple that was located in Sedona, where a lot of the same things occurred. You're going to hear about the Sedona Temple, you're going to hear about people who went there, but most of the focus of this trial is going to be on the Phoenix location, because obviously we're sitting in the Maricopa County Superior Court, so the Sedona Temple is not in Maricopa County. You're going to hear during this trial a lot about the name Janet Craven. Janet Craven was probably the best way to put it, the second in charge. She was referred to as the high priestess, and whenever Miss Elise was not at the Phoenix Goddess Temple, she basically ran things. You're also going to hear that she was one of the primary individuals that was in charge of all the finances. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but she created a lot of the financial documents that you're going to be seeing throughout the course of this trial. The Phoenix officers who did their investigation at some point identified several individuals who you're going to hear referred to as the gatekeepers. And those 3 individuals were Tamara Caruso, Marcella Saavedra, who went by Gabby, and Sylvia Wade, who was actually Miss Elise's daughter. Whenever you hear about the gatekeepers, most likely it's going to be referring to one of these 3 females. Now, one of the things to note is that these 3 females were not involved in any of the prostitution. They were not involved in doing the sessions that you're going to hear about. Their primary role was they basically answered the phones and they did the scheduling for the males who wanted to make appointments to come into the temple to see women. So those were their primary roles. They also had some other minor roles that we'll hear about during the trial. But those are the gatekeepers. You're going to hear a lot about the goddesses. They're also referred to as practitioners in this case. They were referred that way during the trial. Primarily, they were female. You're also going to hear that there were several male practitioners who worked at the temple who would see female customers that would come in, but primarily they were female. All of them had goddess names. They were names that they were asked to choose when they came to the temple, something that embodied them. But that's typically what they went by. Some of them didn't even know each other's real names. They just knew each other by these goddess names. You're going to hear them referred to a lot during the trial. It's important to note, ladies and gentlemen, some of the things that I'm going to be talking about in my opening statement, you may be saying, how did they know that? You're going to hear from a lot of these girls during this trial. A number of them have taken plea agreements that require them to testify and talk about what happened at the Goddess Temple during the time that they were employed there. one of the things that the Phoenix Police Department was able to determine is kind of how the process worked, how the business operated. And you're going to hear that basically everything started on a website called Backpage. Now, most people who are not involved in the criminal justice system, or just normal everyday people, like a lot of you are, probably when you think of prostitution, you think of what you kind of see in the movies and the TV shows in terms of how things used to be, where the women would walk up and down the street and wait for cars to stop and pick them up, type of thing. And that still goes on. But you're going to hear during this trial that most people who are involved in prostitution and most males who are looking to solicit somebody involved in prostitution, they meet on a website called Backpage. There's some other websites where they meet as well, but Backpage is one of the most prominent ways where prostitutes and men who solicit prostitutes actually connect with each other. If you're not familiar with Backpage, it is a website where you can go and buy or sell just about anything. People sell clothes, people sell furniture, people sell cars on Backpage. 99% of it, completely legal. But you're going to hear that there is a separate section of Backpage that is an adult section. If you go into the adult section, you're going to see that there's categories that you can click on. There's an escort section, there's a body rub section, there's a fetish section, and you're going to hear from detectives who work in the vice unit of the Phoenix Police Department. So primarily what they investigate is prostitution. You're going to hear that 99.9% of what's on that part of the website is illegal prostitution. You're also going to hear that is where the Phoenix Goddess Temple did their advertising. All of the women who worked at the Goddess Temple were required to put advertising onto Backpage.com under the adult section, either escort or body rub or fetish, to advertise their services. So you can probably imagine what kind of men were coming across those types of advertisements. It's probably very difficult for you to see, ladies and gentlemen, but this is a sample of an advertisement that the Goddess Temple had on Backpage.com. This is for one of the females who was working at the temple during this time period. Her name was Nicola Hayden, but she went by Guinevere. And if you can see the ad, the title of it is Sexy, Sensual, Arturian Fantasy Goddess Guinevere in Temple from 10 a.m. today. A couple key things. There's a phone number in the ad for the customer to call. You're going to hear that the phone number goes to the Phoenix Goddess Temple. Also in the advertisement, and probably difficult for you to see, that there are rates for how much the services cost. There's a rate for an hour, there's a rate for 90 minutes. And you're going to see those rates in a lot of the Backpage advertisements that are relevant to this case. The last thing I'm going to point out is on this advertisement, and you'll see this during the trial a lot closer up. Guinevere here is advertising that if the male wants, she can bring in a second goddess named Venus so that the male can actually have a session with two separate females at the same time. Now, the process that the Phoenix Police Department was able to figure out in terms of how this business worked is the male would call the number off the Backpage advertisement and they would speak to one of those three people that I talked about being the gatekeeper. That's where this session would basically get scheduled. They would set a date, they would set a time, and the gatekeepers had documents where they knew exactly how comfortable each goddess was in terms of what they were willing to do and what they weren't willing to do. They called them mutuality levels. And they knew when a seeker or a customer called, they were called seekers at the temple. The gatekeepers knew if a person's looking for this, okay, I'm going to set them up with this particular goddess because she kind of fits what he's looking for. And this is where these sessions were set up. Once the male or the seeker came into the temple, it basically works like a massage parlor. You walk in, there's a receptionist, you get some forms that you fill out, you'll see some of those forms are called seeker forms. You put your name and you initial some boxes, and that's it. And you're going to see on these forms that the males were actually encouraged to put a fake name onto the form. They did not have to put their real name. They were encouraged not to. Once that was filled out, they were led back to one of these rooms. Now, these are not all of the rooms, but these for example, of some of the rooms that you're going to see that were inside of the goddess temple. They called them transformation chambers. Each room had a different color or a different theme associated with it. But one common element that every room had in this temple is it had a massage table and it had a bed. The massage tables were referred to as altars of light. The beds were referred to as grand altars. They had different terminology for what they called things. That's essentially what they were. Once the session started, that's obviously where the legality issues kind of kick in this case. Because you're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that basically what would happen at that point is the goddesses or the practitioners would perform usually a 1 hour, sometimes a 90-minute session, and they would do what they call whole body healing. It basically consisted of a massage, some type of sensual massage. They would do something that's called chakra cleansing sometimes, depending on the goddess. We're going to hear a little bit about that. The goddess would always be at least topless, if not completely naked during the session. The male was completely naked during the session. And you're going to hear both from officers and women who were involved in these sessions that almost every single time at the end of this session, there would be a sexual act that would be performed. Typically, it would be manual masturbation or something that's usually referred to as a hand job, to the point where the male would typically ejaculate. At the goddess temple, they call that a release. You're going to hear that some goddesses actually took things even further, depending on how comfortable they were with the male that came in. You're going to hear from some of the goddesses or practitioners that they actually would go to the bed and have sexual intercourse with the men that were coming into the temple, something that they call sacred union. At the end of the session, what would typically happen before the male would leave is he would leave money at that point. You're going to hear this as a cash-only business, no checks, no credit card, no Apple Pay, nothing like that. It was cash. And the males were always required to leave the cash in a little statue that they would have in the room and kind of hands out. So the goddesses would tell the male to put the money kind of in the hands of the statue. The male would leave. Now, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, and this is kind of where the money laundering charges come in this case, that you see, the money would get divided. A portion of the money would go to the goddess who performed the session. Another portion of the money would go to the temple itself. It wasn't always the same percentage because it depended on who the goddess was, how long she had worked there, and what time period you were talking about. But generally, the goddess would be approximately 70% of the money, and 30% would go to the temple. The money that went to the temple would be placed in an envelope by the goddess. She would put it into a safe, and eventually Janet Craven, the second in charge, would pull it out, would count it, and you're going to hear that that money would usually onto net spend cards. You're going to hear what that is a little bit more during the trial. But the money and the net spend card would then be used to pay all the bills for the temple. It would be used to pay the salaries for people like the gatekeepers of the temple. It was used to pay for all of Miss Elise's expenses so she could maintain her lifestyle during this time period. So the money was going back to the temple and it was going to pay some of the people who worked at the temple. Again, this may be difficult for you to see. This is an example of some of the financial records that you're going to see in this case. On the left column are the goddesses that were working during the month of January 2011. And across the top are basically the days of the month. It goes from January 1st to January 7th on this portion. To give you an example, Guinevere on January 4th did 2 sessions for $200. That's the money that went to the temple after her session. At the bottom, if you can see it, on that particular day, if you take all the goddesses together, there were 23 sessions, and the temple paid $1,948 on January 4th from the money that these women were making through these sessions. Now, in terms of how we know what was going on, I told you a little bit about what some of the practitioners and goddesses will testify. You're going to hear that the Phoenix Police Department during the 6-month investigation went undercover into the temple. And you're going to hear that both male and female detectives went in undercover. The male detectives went in posing as seekers. So they went in posing as customers looking to do sessions with someone. And you're going to hear from detectives that they did sessions going from left to right through these pictures. Elizabeth Leiden, Rebecca Carrera, Tracy Elise, Darlene Wheelahan, and Audrey Starr, who went by Salil. So those are who the deals were done with. You're going to hear from some of these girls. You're going to hear the recordings of the conversations that took place in the transformation chamber between the undercover detectives and these female goddesses. You're going to hear conversations where the goddesses agree to perform a sexual act and where they talk about money before they pay for that sexual act during the session. In addition to the male undercovers, you're also going to hear about female undercover officers who went in. You're going to hear they went in posing as women who wanted to work at the temple as a practitioner or as a goddess. You're going to hear from 3 different female detectives in this case. You're going to hear that when they went into the temple that they spoke and had conversations with both Tamara Brusso, who's actually now deceased, and they also had conversations with Jenny Craven, the second in charge. And they had conversations where the detectives posed as women who were basically working as prostitutes. They told Ms. Craven, they told Ms. Brusso that their escorts working on Backgate doing prostitution indicated they have no religion background, no spiritual background, but they're looking for a place to work. You're going to hear the temple hired all 3 to work as practitioners at the temple. And through the conversations that these detectives had, and through some of the documentation that was provided to them, you're going to learn a little bit about what these goddesses went through when they first got hired, and what the process was when they got hired, and when they actually started doing these sessions where these sex acts were occurring. You're going to hear that the goddesses would take a couple of classes. There was a theory of practice class that they called it. It was about 2 hours long. There was a magnetic tantra class that a few of them would take. They would take these classes basically to learn about, I guess, what they did. And then they would have to do what are referred to as new sister duos. So these women now would have to go and do a session with another more experienced goddess to kind of learn how to do it. So you're going to hear from some of these women about what they experienced during these new session duos and what they observed other females doing during these sessions in terms of sexual acts. After these new sister duos were done, you're going to hear that the goddesses, before they could start seeing men that came into the temple, would have to do what's called a threshold session. A threshold session is where the women would do a session with a male who worked at the temple. You're going to hear that there were 4 or 5 so men who worked at the temple. They were referred to as the temple men. And what these men would do is they basically would do a pretend session where the goddess would do a session on them, which would include a sexual act. And then the men would bring them back to Miss Elise or Miss Craven about how the goddess did and whether she was ready to start seeing men coming. That's basically how the process worked. You're going to see that a lot of the practitioners and goddesses that work at the temple, or at least some of them, they have very diverse backgrounds. There were some women who did have some spiritual background. Some of them were licensed massage therapists. Some of them did Reiki, which we'll hear a little bit about. There were some women that were just escorts. They had no background in any of the spiritual stuff. They had no background in massage. They basically did illegal escorting and then became goddesses at the goddess temple. Now, up on the screen is what I anticipate, ladies and gentlemen, will be the legal definition of prostitution that you will get from the judge at the end of this trial. And it basically tells you that prostitution is engaging in or agreeing or offering to engage in sexual conduct under a fee arrangement with any person for money or any other valuable consideration. You're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, during this trial, Miss Elise talk about the fact that this was not prostitution. Some of the reasons you're going to hear her give for why this was not prostitution was, I'll give you some examples. They didn't call it a fee at the God's Temple. They called it a donation. You're going to hear that the men were required to leave the money after the sexual act, not before the sexual act. You're going to hear that the men, after the sexual act was performed, wouldn't give the money directly to the goddess. They would have to put it in that little statue. You're going to hear that basically Miss Elisa developed a system to try to get around the prostitution laws of the state of Arizona. You're going to hear from Detective Campbell, who is an experienced detective with the vice unit, this is not uncommon. It is very common in these types of investigations for people to try to either A, avoid law enforcement, or B, come up with some sort of system that they think will get around the prostitution law. When you listen to those arguments during the course of this trial, ladies and gentlemen, you hear Ms. Elise question about these things, I want you to keep something in mind. And it's a saying that you might have heard before at some point in your life. And the saying basically goes, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and swims like a duck, it's probably a duck. Because you're going to hear during this trial that the vast majority of men that walked into the Phoenix Goddess Temple did so with the expectation they were going to receive a sexual act. Then received the sexual act, and then paid money for the sexual act. This was not a house of not a house of worship. This was a house of prostitution, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to hear that there were some legitimate things that they did. They had courses, they had some classes. But in terms of how the Goddess Temple made money, how they paid the salaries, how they paid the bills, it was through illegal prostitution. At the end of this trial, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stand up here, or the state is going to stand up here, and we're going to ask you to render the only reasonable verdict in this case, and that's guilty.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. 10 minutes. Please remember the admonition.
All rise for the jury.
You may leave your notebooks in here if you would like on your chairs. We're off the record. Ms. Elise, how long do you think your opening statement will take?
I anticipate about a half hour to 45 minutes.
Okay. Does the state have any witnesses for today, or do you want to start tomorrow?
We can begin with Detective Campbell's direct examination of Ms. Elise's.
All right, we'll see how we do.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I would just say, Judge, if we're 5 or 7 minutes, we might as well just start tomorrow. We have 5 or 7 minutes left, something like that.
Sure. Okay. All right, thank you.
Good. The pictures on. We should check and do like a check wall for it. It's like.
Because I took
Yeah, we're stuck around 4:30, somewhere around 4:30. Not sure exactly what time, but somewhere around there.
That's all.
I didn't see her.
I may not do that.
Is that where Mike is this afternoon? Oh, is that today? Did they do it?
Text Jeff. She should be there now.
Oh, okay.
They are. Yeah.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and counsel. Ms. Elise, you may give an opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I'm standing here before you as a person born in the United States, raised in Fairbanks, Alaska, kind of the edge of America. I grew up around pioneers, people who were a little bit different. And one of the most important things for me in my entire life is my pride. And that pride comes from that we are a melting pot and that we are different. And so you might think, I'm standing here. Why would a woman stand there and defend herself when she could have an attorney? And what I've discovered after 4 years of waiting to go to trial is that the system cannot do what needs to be done with this matter unless I just am willing to go from the bottom up, every level of courts in the United States. And both of my parents were government officials, civil servants, and regardless of what's going on so far, the misunderstandings, the application of laws that I don't feel apply to me, and other laws that I do feel apply to me are being ignored, we're going to get to a place where I hope that we will all see there's truth in this, there's misunderstanding in it, there's misapplication. That's mostly coming from the state not having any understanding of who I am, my mindset, and what I'm up to, and the stuff. So, to start with, I'm going to introduce you again, probably to one of my heroes, Mahatma Gandhi. And he says, very first day of morning, you'll see evidence in this case going forward over the next few months that it looked like the local governments were ignoring that. But in fact, meetings were taking place and decisions were being made about who we are, who is the Phoenix Goddess Temple, and what are they up to. You'll actually see that between the period of July of 2009 and when the raids occurred, the SWAT team raids on our healing centers, you will see that I went to numerous meetings. I would say over a dozen meetings with various city officials in Scottsdale, in Sedona, and here in Phoenix. And for a period of years, until that article came out, city officials in Sedona, city officials in Scottsdale, city officials in Phoenix, all weighed in to me and our church, our temple folk, that they understood that we were a different church and they weren't going to do anything about it, and that they had actually visited the Phoenix Goddess Temple between 2008, 2009, and 2010, and the investigation you're going to be hearing did not start until 2011. But you're going to hear this long journey of myself, Janet Craven, and a number of other people in the temple, when we would go and meet with people and explain our religion, and explain what we are up to. And I have been ignored, I have been laughed at, and now I'm here to, well, they're fighting, and I'm taking a stand. Taking a stand so that we can win the right to exist in this country. I am not a sexual surrogate. I am not a prostitute. I am not a massage parlor lady, and I'm definitely not a girl. What I am is a woman who has dedicated her life to understanding the discrepancy around sexuality, which to me is sacred, some of the most fun you can have on the planet,
and healing. It's an electrical reset for your system. And so for my entire life, I've been looking at human sexuality and why is there this weird constraint on it that the church put there. And I went deeply into conventional Christianity. I campaigned for Pat Robertson when he ran for president. So I understand the fundamental Christian viewpoint. After that stopped working for me, because I couldn't take the idea that if our missionaries didn't get there in time, those people were going to go to hell. Actually, I had to walk out on that. I just couldn't do it. And then I began to look at other ways of being around sexuality, praying to God and Goddess. When I'm sworn in, I will ask to be sworn in. So help me God and Goddess. I will ask for both. Because to me, the Creator is both masculine and feminine, and that is the religion of Tantra. You're going to hear about 3 ancient wisdom streams today, and those are going to describe my mindset. So, next slide. So, since this has begun, ladies and gentlemen, many people from across the country have come to my aid. They believe that sacred sexuality has a place in our culture. And you saw the definition of prostitution. If we do our ceremonies, we do our healing, and then we are not allowed, at one point the prosecutor said, well, you can accept flowers and fruit baskets for your ceremonies. And I said to them, how in the world will I build a house of worship to the Mother Goddess? How in the world will we fashion a Tantra temple or have a mystery school where we ordain priestesses and healers and shamans so they can grok with the government? How can we do that with flowers and fruit baskets as the only form that we're accepted to? If someone says, we love what you're doing, here, have some bananas. Here, here's a bouquet of roses that'll last you like. So, I'm going to say to you, each and every one of you, the state's going to spend a lot of time talking about sex in the transformation chain. They're going to describe to you various forms of legal, technical terms about sex. I'm going to say right at the beginning of the trial, right now, my very first words to you, that sexuality is sacred. It was part of my personal ceremonies, and I held space for people to teach, guide, learn, heal. The ancient practices, they're real and they're ancient, from the Bible. And you're going to discover that the state has simplified something very, very complex. I became a doctor of arts, human sexuality, at the Institute for the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality, which is adjunct to the University of California, Berkeley. And I was given this title of Dr. Tracy Elise after this happened. Can you imagine that someone would give me this honorary degree, the highest one that they can confer on a person? They gave me this degree after the raise. Actually happened this year. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, these are my honored elders, James and Linda Moon. They are Seminole, they are Lakota, and the gentleman in the center, James Flaming Eagle Reed, his great-grandfather, also named James Reed, saw what was happening in the early 1900s in this country. What was happening with Christianity and the manifest destiny. We need to get out and take Christianity everywhere, and if we come across some culture that doesn't match Christianity, we're going to change it through force if necessary. I'm not going to go into that because that's not relevant to this case. But this gentleman and this woman are my elders. The Native American Church was founded before Congress in 1918 by James Mooney's great-great-grandfather with the help of the Smithsonian Institution. And I'm going to ask you to please remember that this church is my legal status. This church chartered both the Sedona Temple and the Phoenix Temples before the raise. These elders have told me this year that of all the Native American ceremonies that they are seeking to preserve and share with the world, that the one of holy anointing, hands-on healing, and matriarchal sexual healing and initiation is the most important gift that we can give as a church to our country. Because not everyone's going to do peyote ceremony with the grandfather peyote. Not everyone is going to do a sweat lodge. Not everyone's going to do a blanket ceremony or smoke cannabis. All kinds of ceremonies that people may not take part in. But every single person in this country owes their life to sex. And what I mean by that is we all owe our existence here to the act of sexuality. And I grew up in a very Christian home, married into the Catholic faith. And the Catholic faith and the traditional Christian faith describe that sexuality is only sacred in marriage and only sacred if you're making babies. We now know, through what's happened with gay marriage, that we have to view this magnetic sexual exchange with people as having value, as being sacred to some people, even if you don't feel that a woman and a woman together or a man and a man together is sacred. The law has determined that yes, they can have that relationship, and yes, they can codify that relationship into law. So these people you will be hearing from, well, you won't be hearing from my son. He's acting as my advisor here at the bench. That's my son, Benjamin Landers Wade. In my religion, all men are associated with light and air. And all women are of the earth and ocean. And together, when we put air, fire, water, and earth together, we have a wholeness, and that's how creation is formed. Men carry fire and air, women carry water and earth. And together, we make everything. So you'll be hearing from James Mooney, and he'll explain to you what the Native American church has to do with the Phoenix Goddess. What was he doing there? Why did he bless us? Why did he charter us and make us a part of a church that has over 280 branches right now and growing? Next slide. Since the raids, my elders and the council at the national level have elected me to be the lead ceremonialist for Holy Anointing for all 200 plus chapters. Why would they give me that title and that honor and that responsibility and duty to carry the Holy Anointing ceremony, the sacred sexuality where the woman is completely in charge, she's guiding every moment, and the man knows that his only reward will be to bow to who she is and what she is in that moment that he needs connection with the goddess. So I am the lead ceremonialist for Holy Anointing and also for Hands-On Healing in the Native American Church nationally. You will hear that James Mooney blessed the Sedona temples, the schools, the ashram and parsonage. He visited each and every one of our buildings. And you will testify that he found those facilities to be clean, wholesome, spiritual, sacred, and holy. That will be his testimony. And you'll hear that testimony from many people. So get ready for a schism in words. You're going to hear them using some of my words, and you're going to hear them using some of my words incorrectly. The truth is that I never called any one of the women in the temple goddess, unless someone else did. But for me as the mother priestess, I don't speak like that. I don't claim to be a deity. I have not walked on water. I have not turned water into wine. I have not raised the dead. So I never called myself a goddess, definitely not with a big G. And when we did refer to ourselves as goddess, we would use the word goddess in body. So you'll hear that. That's different than calling yourself a deity. And again, that's my spiritual family. We have also been honored with the Order of Hospitaliers, which is a St. Lazarus of Jerusalem. That's an order that I was conducted into, as well as the Native American Church, and they are standing by us to protect indigenous and matriarchal culture worldwide. They have come to our aid, and they are also, you'll see that's the green cross, that's the symbol of the St. Lazarus of Jerusalem, the Good Samaritan. They have also chosen to honor me after the race. It's interesting, isn't it? Most people don't get doctorates and given commanderies of whole states after the government attacks. It's kind of unusual, isn't it? It's a good story. Next slide, please. What brought me to Arizona? What brought me to Arizona was there was 3 men practicing various forms of sacred sexuality here. A gentleman named Ray Stubbs, you'll see him, he's a witness, and he runs a beautiful program of shamanic sacred sexual practices in Tucson. You will also hear someone from the Kodeshka, the Sweet Medicine tribe, where there's a gentleman by the name of Harley Swift-Deer, and 30-some years ago here in the valley, he made a decision to begin to gather the elder wisdom on sacred sexuality. In the Native American tradition, as I said, the women healed the men, and the women healed each other. And the realm of sexuality, childbirth, conception, absolutely controlled by women. And I'll explain that when we get a little further in. Guys, it doesn't mean we're left out. It's actually a system of balancing energies where we all have, women have special powers and focus, as do men. This group, International School of Temple Arts and the Sedona Temple, they're another community. I was part of the very moment that the founder of Sedona Temple, Babadez Nichols, when he first began to see the transformation, was actually a very spiritual process and also religious because of all the ceremonies and our special words and our special beliefs. And so when the Sedona Temple was founded in the late part of 2007, with proper paperwork with the state of Arizona, and you may hear them say over and over that I didn't have church documentation. The truth is that they didn't want to look at my church documentation. And that they thought, yeah, it doesn't matter, you're still breaking the law. Guess what? There's a body of law in this state that is used to balance government interest in ceremonies that don't seem normal and might even seem illegal. There's a way of balancing that, and depending on what happens going forward, I may be able to share that with you. I hope that I can. The International School of Temple Arts, I'm moved to be part of. I sat on the advisory circle. I have a special program just for the healing and training of women in Sedona under the Sedona Temple School of Temple Arts. This group now has thousands of members throughout the United States and throughout the world. And what these people do is they go into these ancient traditions, Tantra from India, from Egypt, shamanism from South America and North America and Russia, and the pagan aspect of worshiping the mother aspect of God. So, and that's what we call goddess worship. We're just saying, just as a priest stands there for the Mass and says, God is not with us now, but I will stand here, I have studied God's Word, I've devoted myself to God's Word and understanding what the Father's wisdom is for people. And that priest role is my role in the Phoenix Goddess Temple. I am to embody the mother's love for her children, for all of humanity, and give out the mother's wisdom on the body, holy anointing, and sacred sexuality. So you'll be hearing from the School of Temple Arts, and thank you next time. And there I have been a practitioner, a teacher, a facilitator, and a center holder with this group since the beginning of 2008. January of 2008, I've been with the School of Temple Arts in Sedona. This is an important story because, as I said, we were meeting with officials, government officials, throughout this period, And you will discover, you'll have testimony from the mayor of Sedona and the person who took us through our planning and zoning up there. Sedona is a city of healers. Even as they were conducting this undercover investigation, at the exact moment that I was being chartered by the Native American Church and told in a meeting at the Sedona City Council, a full meeting, they're up there at a dais just like this. There's the mayor, the vice mayor, and the full city council. Second full meeting as to discuss whether or not we allow the Phoenix Goddess Temple, the Sedona Temple, to be in the city of Sedona. Sedona is such a small town that there's no uniform zoning. So everything you do, very old-fashioned, very traditional, you take it to the city elders, and they say, yes, you can use a building like that, or no, you cannot. It's only a town of 17,000 people. So when we wanted to set up our school of temple arts, and the Goddess Temple, and the Tantra Temple, we had to get permission. We went through a 14-month process with the city of Sedona, and I will be sharing that with you. And in July of 2011, about 6 weeks before we were raided with SWAT, battering rams, gas masks, semi-automatic rifles, I'm not joking, we were meeting with the city council. I will be showing you the headline. City council and mayor approves and permits the sex therapy temple. You won't hear the prosecution talking about sexual surrogacy. They'll say it doesn't matter. But that's another area in our society where we acknowledge that all sexual problems cannot be handled with talk alone. And that's why throughout this country, sexual surrogacy has been allowed and continues to be. The difference between sexual surrogacy and what we're doing in the temple is that in sexual surrogacy, you must see a psychiatrist and get that referral to work with someone to be a partner to overcome a problem that you might be having. Some of the problems that people were coming to me for are obviously big problems. Men who cannot control their energy when they're with a partner. They're sharing energy quickly, the lovemaking is over. Other men, they've lost all their energy down here. And they're like, I don't want to take Viagra anymore. Is there a natural energy solution? Yes, there is. Other people have no partners. They're workaholic, and they're always hurt. Other people are divorced. I remember one man, there's so many stories about seekers. One that comes to mind is a gentleman whose wife had left him because he was a bad lover. And on the way out the door, she's like, and by the way, you're a bad lover. Then he takes years to recover from this because he thought he was doing okay. She probably wasn't telling him the truth. That's how we roll in America. We want to tell the truth about sex. A lot of prophecy, a lot of weird stuff. And sorry, I just.
Oh, the seekers.
Okay. So surrogacy, sexual surrogacy, has been approved in governments throughout the United States. The difference is you sort of have to be a little bit crazy to get to work with a surrogate. In our temple, the filtering system, as you'll discover, has to do with, are you as a seeker a man, a woman, a couple? A man, a woman, a couple. We had couples coming to that temple. We had programs specifically for couples. We had programs specifically for singles. We had so many programs where we will get to that. But the difference is that in the Phoenix Goddess Temple and the School of Temple Arts, we are using ancient religious and spiritual practices under the Most High as our, and we're using ceremonies and techniques and predate. Why are we not hearing about it? Well, it's a minority. I accept that I'm in a minority religion. Next slide, please. This is my family, the Phoenix Goddess Temple. Here you will see 2010, the Priestess Path. These are women who were not only healers, and I'm going to correct Mr. Sammons. You will hear throughout the testimony that many of our people were already trained as healers, counselors, ordained ministers, nurses. Yes, perhaps erotic dancers. Yes, perhaps women have even been accused of prostitution. What these women all had in common was they felt that they had a gift to make sexuality wholesome and to communicate that with other people one-on-one and in group settings, and to do so in the name of the mother. So this is the priestess path, and it is my third cycle of ordaining women on behalf of the mother goddess. As I said, just as a priest decides he will devote his life to embodying the Father, always give that Father's love and wisdom. These women took a vow with me, and I made my first priestess vow in 2002. So, but these women completed the priestess path, and they were ordained in a ceremony, and I will be delighted to share that footage with you. You will see what it meant to them to be accepted with the wisdom they felt they had. These are some of our temple men. I love these. I haven't seen some of these pictures in a while. So, the men of the temple are special because they're unwilling to accept what the world says about sex. They don't want porn, because porn, the guy always gets what he wants, and it always kind of looks the same. Eventually, it kind of feels the same. The men that came to the temple were interested in the mystery. They weren't going to come into the temple and buy sex, because sex wasn't for sale. If someone came to me, even now, today, next week, next year, 10 years, let's say that they legalize or decriminalize prostitution, which I've never been part of that politics, but let's just say it was. I would not change a thing about how our temples are run. And you'll understand why when we finish this long process. The temple men, these men, right here, and these men willing to show their face in a photograph. These men are not the men who look to a biology class at high school to get their sex ed, pornography to get their sex ed, what their friends said out behind the hockey rink. These men thought that women had something to teach them about sex. These men were willing to enter the temple like this, honoring woman's wisdom. Next slide. So there's been this discussion about who. I'm just going to talk about what the grand jury did not see. The grand jury.
Judge, I'm going to object to this line of argument.
Sustained. Approach, please.
Thank you. I cannot talk about the grand jury didn't see this. I'm sorry.
We have to wait for the court reporter to be ready, and we have to wait for everyone to get here before we can make a record. All right, and I'm going to wait until she's ready. Okay, yes, you cannot talk about the grand jury. The grand jury isn't relevant here. So you can talk about the information, but don't reference it back to the grand jury.
Grand jury didn't see.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Okay.
But you can talk about the information.
Okay, thank you. These are programs that you'll be hearing about. You'll see dozens of weekly newsletters which show teachers from all over the world, shamans from South America and North America, Hawaiian and Polynesian healers, people of the Taoist teachings from China, people from Italy doing alchemy. Pretty much every sacred sexuality stream that exists, and every religion has a hidden, it's called esoteric, it's hidden. Most religions have a hidden teaching about sexuality, and ours was hidden in private ceremonies. Yes, it was. Whole body healings, couples. You know, the state keeps saying about men, women. The truth is that men with the energy here are much more likely to seek out something like this, but we had many women who were seeking out what was at the Phoenix Goddess Temple.
women who had been sexually assaulted, incested, okay? Women who had body issues and didn't feel beautiful, women who were inorgasmic and they'd never had an orgasm with or without a partner. And something inside drew them naturally to the Phoenix Goddess Temple to take part in classes, private healing, etc. You're going to hear that our policies are and were that if someone does not leave an offering at the end of the ceremony, nothing happens. The state is trying to tell you that there was a blacklist of people who didn't donate and they were blocked from coming back. You're going to hear testimony from our people. That's simply not true. Simply not true. They wish it was true. That man was produced a blacklist if there wasn't one. And you'll hear testimony from 3 or 4 people who even hadn't even been in the temple very long. They understood this very well. That if you cannot step into the transformation chamber in faith that your work will be supported, you should not work at the temple. And the seekers, the people who came for the healings, they are told on the phone, if you need a guaranteed outcome of any kind, the temple is not going to work for you. You need to step into the chamber in faith that what you need, you will receive. And if you need a guarantee, and this is in our script, and we'll show you this, and you'll hear the case agents say they heard this again and again, that when people ask for specific sex act, let's say it's a guy, he doesn't understand that this is a temple. And he says, hey, will she have intercourse with me? Will she give me a release? Somebody's not using term. At least not what you're educated on. If someone asked for a specific sex act, they were always told, I'm sorry, if you need a guaranteed outcome, the temple won't work for you. You'll see that in the written script and you'll hear it in oral testimony. You'll also hear the lead case agent repeat testimony she gave just a couple weeks ago. She's actually in the what's called supply reduction side of prostitution. And she stated that telling someone on the phone there's no guaranteed outcome, that the guys won't come in if they don't say, yeah, you can do that for that much money. If you don't say, yeah, come on in, I'll do that for that much money. The guys that are shopping for sex for money, they don't want to come in. If you're shopping and you want to go buy some tomatoes, and yeah, maybe we have tomatoes, maybe we don't. You go to that place, was offering, yes, you're coming in for counseling. Oh, yes, but the counselor might be here, might not. They might be in the mood to help you, they might not. Come on. Does that sound like homes? Probably not. I don't know. Priestess class. Sexual trauma. This is what the state took from this community, from Fairbanks and Phoenix and Scottsdale. This is what the state didn't like. Or it didn't have enough value to treat us like a church. Sexual trauma recovery. You're going to hear from Wayne Clayton, who was sexually traumatized. I'm not speaking out of turn, he's one of our witnesses. He was incested in his family of origin, as was Aphrodite, the woman that you just saw on the screen, 2 people who were in that article. I asked the Phoenix New Times to please print our retraction, a correction. The article was rife with things taken out of context. They refused. They refused to correct anything that was incorrect about the article. Sexual trauma recovery. They took this from our community. People who've been raped and incested and recovered from it to where they felt happy, healthy, and whole. Those people were leading programs. Did those programs cost money? No, they did not. Everything is by donation. Everything. And I'm going to say something about the state's allegation that this was cash. We could run credit cards. We chose not to run credit cards with our seekers in. We use credit cards for tuition, and people, if they couldn't pay, still come to class. Tuition payments, socials, dances, things like that. If you couldn't pay, you can still come in. So you're going to hear all this stuff. I chose not to use credit cards because early in my career as a priestess and a healer, I met a man who ran up his credit cards going to places with women of unusual attraction, whatever that was. And I thought to myself, this will never happen in my life. I won't let credit cards be used in this section. They can't get out the actual donation. I'm not going to encourage that. So they have their mindset about why I don't cash only. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a very conscious choice. And anyone, and I can show you credit card transactions from people who ask to use credit cards to make a donation. Oh, yeah. There. Okay. Christmas pack, my ordination program. Sunday services, every day. You know how every Sunday, do you know how we set our Sunday services up? Is the goddess is in relationship to God. So we set the Sunday services up at the mother's house to begin at 12:30 with brunch. So that every single person in that community go to church, and they normally go to church at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And then they could come to the mother's house, sit in a circle on the floor on cushions, have a brunch, make a donation or not for the brunch, share what happened in that week. We'll tell you about our services. That was Sunday services at the mother's temple, was to complement the Sunday services at the father's churches. Classes for the building. Since 2003, my temple spaces and schools have held puja. Puja is divine witness to one another. We have had every Friday, sex ed for all every Friday night. You know that each day of the week is named after a planet, and that Friday, a god or a goddess, Thursday is Thor. Friday is named after the Norwegian goddess Freya. And so our classes on Friday nights since 2003 have been called Freya Friday Nights, Sex Ed for All. The IRS says if you want to have a legitimate church, and I learned this in 2005, I got the list about what I needed to do to be legitimate in my culture. You've got to have a free talk about your religion every week. Well, all of our stuff was free anyway. But this is an IRS requirement, a gifted, recommended gifted programs. But people were coming on Friday nights. In fact, you'll hear that Detective Campbell came to one of the couples tantra massage. 2 and 4-year practitioner training and ordination programs. We had the only one in the United States. The only residency program in the United States. You're actually going to hear that not only did the state of Arizona take down a local goddess temple in Sedona and Phoenix, you're going to hear that they took down an international training and ordination program where people came from all over the world. That's what you're going to hear. And it's going to be lovely. You're going to love the teachers. Okay, next slide. Oh, by the way, please go back to 2005. You see that picture with me? See those women dressed up in funny costumes? Each one of those women studied and then chose a goddess from the ancient world. And many of them are Christian, by the way. We don't see this as a conflict. We see that we choose, just like you look at Jesus and say, I will walk the way Jesus did. Our people choose a goddess to embody. And these women take a vow to walk the earth with the qualities of this goddess so that the mother's love may return to the earth. You've got over here on the far, you have Arabia, which is an Italian goddess of magic. You have Bast, an Egyptian goddess of play and laughter. You have Freya, the Norwegian and Northern European goddess of sacred sexuality and leadership, Freya. That is Mother Mary. That woman is a Catholic woman, and she felt that Mother Mary was the highest goddess of all, so she's dressed as Mother Mary. That's my daughter Sylvia. She chose to embody the goddess Durga, a Hindu goddess, who puts an end to the demon king with a flick of her toe. The woman center, goddess West. I believe she was Luna of the moon. The woman next to her, goddess Lilith. There is an ancient religious history. Before Eve, there was Lilith. This young woman, a fierce young woman, I want to be Lilith. I want to embody the woman who is wild.
Judge, I'm not sure how this is relevant to this
Oh,
case. I'm
because you
sorry.
said that you.
Oh, hold it. Approach, please. Approach, please. Your objection?
Based on relevance, Judge, we're identifying people from 2003, apparently.
That's
going
gonna,
into their costumes.
Your Honor, I've done the same thing for
One at a
years.
time. Let him finish and then I'll hear from you. Go ahead.
Based on the time period and based on, I don't even know who these people are. I don't
Judge Wilson.
understand. I don't understand the relevance of what she's talking about right now.
How does this relate to?
Thank you, Your Honor. They just said that there were two definitions of the goddess. One is the female deity and one is a woman of exceptional attractiveness. I'm saying these women were embodying deities, and I'm right now refuting their claim that it didn't have anything to do with the first one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was in their opening argument, and I'm just refuting it.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the objection, but why don't we move on rather than going through all of this?
Well, Mr. Sammons has said there's two definitions of a goddess, a female deity or a woman of exceptional attraction, and I just wanted to give you a little window. I want to refute that, and quickly move on. That is Diana, Isis. Isis is the Egyptian goddess. Diana is goddess of the hunt and protected animals, which is strange, but that's how it is. Tara, Kuan Yin, Athena, and I'm Isis of Bridget. Next slide, please. This is the address of the Phoenix Goddess Temple, out back by the canal. It was the 100-year anniversary of the International Day of Women. All over the world, March 8th, every year, is celebrated as the International Day of Women. And we decided that to honor that, we were going to have an International Goddess Congress. And we didn't have a lot of people come, but we still had our Congress, and we still told the world about it. And so this is us being in community with each other. Being in community. This is part of who we are. This isn't just about sex. Next slide. Oh, here we go. Now we're going to get to the essence of this. As I said before, and I feel uncomfortable when they start talking about touching someone's genitals or orgasm release, that kind of thing. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Don't talk about that in life. Really don't. I'm sad because in a religious protecting situation, all of that intimate information would never be used. But because they don't think my church is worthy of those protections, they're going to hear a lot of sexual detail. And I'm sitting here and I'm going to say, right now today, sacred sexuality is absolutely what I was doing. I don't deny that sex is part of what we do. I don't deny that people love information. And I will prove to you that people came and were allowed to come back, or they just left them. You're going to hear this thing about fee donation, You're going to hear a lot of reputation. And they're claiming that there's a black race. It doesn't exist. This, ladies and gentlemen, is called the chakra human energy system. The word chakra is a 5,000-year-old Sanskrit word from India, along with the word tantra. Chakra and tantra will be two words you are going to hear again and again, because they form the foundation of my mindset of what I was doing at the Phoenix Goddess Temple. When you are looking at this the way the state does, you're going to only focus, as the state is doing, on, there was genital contact. Some energy was moved in the root. That's a very narrow dumbing down of what we were doing. In our religion, and Our goal at the Phoenix Goddess Temple and Sedona School of Temple Arts is to help people balance and integrate the energy here in the human system, in the energy system. These ancient teachings about chakras, these 7 energy centers, you can count them: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Those 7 energy centers are how a soul spends their existence in reality. In North America, the Hopi Indians teach a chakra system. In South America, the Mayans taught a chakra system. The Koreans teach a chakra system. India and Tibetan Buddhists, they have related but different chakra systems. And I am a priestess of Egyptian temple history, so I will be sharing with you Egyptian chakra technology. What does this have to do with sex? What does this have to do with release or orgasm, or as we say in the temple, personal nova? Personal nova is when your star body brightens up with energy. This is the basis of what I'm doing in the Phoenix Goddess Temple, helping people discover how to feel their energy, how to share their energy. For women, it's a kind of cultivation. For men, they have to master. For women, they have to feel safe, and they can relax and open like flowers. Exactly the opposite. How men, why this is sexy and fun is that men and women are oppositely charged. So I'm going to demonstrate just quickly, because it does, it'll answer your questions about sex in church real quick here. So you'll see that the red ray here is called the red ray. And 14 chakra images were painted throughout the Phoenix Goddess Temple. One in every transformation chamber, in the reception area, in the sanctuaries, everywhere. This tall. This tall. And as they were like 5 feet tall. And you will hear from the States that the detectives just didn't think that was important. That mattered. Didn't think the 30 altars to the mother, the father, that didn't matter. Altars. Didn't hear all that. Going back to what this is my religion. And I'm not going to go into it right now, so you have something to look forward to. But trust me, I did not make this up. These are religions that are respected. But maybe not in this situation. Next slide. Quickly, just real fun. It's just so you have a little picture on it. The root chakra is where your soul comes to the earth. And it's my belief and our belief that the Father's wand of life, that's the term we use for this part of the body. The Father's wand of life conducts the life of the soul to the physical earth. And so, in the root chakra, masculine energy flows out. Guess what? The feminine energy center here in the red ray does not flow out. It flows in. She is the grounding, the earthing of that power. In the second chakra, here in the belly, this is where the soul receives the body from the mother. And in that moment, the mother has the power of God. She is a goddess. She gives the soul the sacred vessel. She gives the soul a body. Walk around the earth ray. Women flow out in the orange ray, in the belly, where we get pregnant ladies. We have active creation power, and men in that area of the body, self-care for the body, food, water, men receive right there. And this polarity, this sending and receiving, is going to become pertinent later. And again, what I want to say is, ladder of light from the moment when they come to the planet, we come to the planet, and through lessons and life experience, the light of our soul connects, climbs the ladder of light to the crown. You may not be familiar with chakras. If you've been in some Christian churches, you will have seen how the saints, the most holy people, they have light around their head, don't they? The saints have light, and that's the crown, and that's the 7th chakra. So even though we're not all familiar with this, It is woven into our society. Another thing about, see the third eye I see right here, and you'll see that I'm wearing my little bindi to mark my third eye. That chakra is displayed in your wallet right now. Maybe you have a $1 bill in your wallet right now? Because if you do, you'll see the pyramid on the back, and you'll see the little all-seeing eye again on top. That's the third eye, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I call myself Mystic Mother because I teach people how to open their third eye. And I want everyone to not only be a five senses human, taste, touch, sight, sound, and smell. I really want people to access the sixth sense. And what is the sixth sense? Well, it happens in the sixth chakra. The sixth sense happens in the sixth chakra. And what is that sixth sense? Energy awareness. Energy awareness. Women use energy awareness to keep themselves safe. Men use directional control of their energy. They're not so concerned about awareness. They have to decide to be energy aware. Men are mostly really concerned. What am I supposed to do with this power raging right here? So we'll leave the latter light for now. But this is the basis of what I was doing and what we were doing in the Phoenix Goddess Temple. And again, it's very sad for me that the state of Arizona wants to see prostitution and massage parlor, first and second chakra, or escort, third chakra, or even girlfriend, nice escort that has works with heart. You're probably going to say all that. But you get into the throat of speaking the truth human to human, only a priestess can do that, only a counselor. You get into the third eye. Now we're talking about moving into the realm of faith, imagination, God, and life. Next slide, please. Ooh. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please take note. The prosecution has to prove that I had a criminal mindset. I met with city officials. For years, I have been ordained by 5 groups, just given a doctorate. I really don't know how they're going to prove I had a criminal mindset. I think part of it is they like to say that the men that came to the temple, they just came to sex. They probably got some guys to say that. Guess what? I was a pastor, and I am. Let's say I was a pastor at a Methodist church. And some people came to me for marriage counseling. And I did my best to share my faith with them. And I prayed, and I said, I want you to try this, and you do that. And they walk out and start fighting. Does that make me less of a pastor? These men that they're saying came for sex for money. There's 75,000 men a day on Backpage and Adult Entertainment every day. 75,000 men. That's bigger than a football stadium for sure. I don't even know football, but that's big, right? A lot of people. A lot of people. Men seeking a goddess in some way. They may not know that what they're seeking is sacred. And I would say that I had an FBI agent tell me that our church only mattered to 3%. But would you want to destroy that little thing that's a light and wholesome and empowering for women? Would you really want to see that go off just because it looked like prostitution to people who were unwilling to really investigate? Why did that 6-month investigation with multiple detectives on it, they miss our elders chartering the church, blessing the land? How did they miss that? Why did they not come to me? Why did they not? Well, we'll get to that. Okay, next slide, please. I'm a healer, a minister. Is that the last slide? Ah, praying. Just praying. Praying to do this. I'm a nice person, and I care about people. I decided to be a minister because my house was always full of people who needed housing and food and clothes. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a minister because I'm doing it anyway. Made it more of a structure for me. I have a whole list of reputations here. I mean, a big list. Look at pages and pages of reputations. But I'm going to spare everybody this evening, just think about this. Just think about what you saw in this presentation and who you perceive me to be. I don't exploit women. I don't harm men. Never have, never been found guilty of any crime in my life, except once, rash possession. I spent overnight in jail, and I suspected of taking money. I don't break the law. It's not even possible for me to break the law, because I believe in karma. And if I do something, it's going to come back to me. So if I do something wrong, I know something's happening. There have been people who would say, oh, you must have done something wrong. They came for your church. I'm going to say no. This is a historic moment. It's a moment for the priestess, the women and men who want to see women teach healing in this way, natural healing in the realm of the body, holy anointing, sacred sexuality, energy control for men, energy mastery. Women being in their power and feeling like a goddess when they're with their God. We're not talking about all the programs that work for practitioners. We're really focusing on these things. It's one of those places guys want to have it for. I will be demonstrating without a question that I could not have had the criminal intent. No fee. This is a donation using anyone's definition. And the last thing I'm going to say is, at night, I pray for resolution. For years, I ask for meetings. I want to talk, so this is a conversation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I look forward to doing this journey with you. Thank you, Anna.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take the evening recess. Please return tomorrow morning at 10:25. We will start promptly at 10:30, so 10:25. Please remember the admonition. Please take your notebooks back to the jury room with you. Have a nice evening.
All rise for the jury.
They're just going to take it.
The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Elise, Mr. Sammons will need a copy of your PowerPoint.
I already gave one to the clerk, Judge.
Thank you. Ms. Elise, we will need a copy of your PowerPoint. Please give it to the clerk by 10:30 tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Your Honor. What media do we use for that?
You can print it, or you can give it to us in some other format.
Paper.
Paper
I
is,
will bring you paper. Thank
paper is preferable. All right, anything else?
Your Honor, we had hoped to walk out with today's disc. Is that possible today? Because they told us that, Ben's been helping me, but he's saying that everyone in the building is saying just have the judge order it, and you did say yesterday that I could have today's hearing.
Yes, whether they can get it for you today or not, I don't know, but I did previously state that you could have a copy of the disc from today's proceedings, so yes. So you'll have
Can I
to...
get something in writing in the principal's office? We've said that you've ordered this. We need something in writing.
Okay, what you can do is have them contact Randy or Janet, and they will let them know, because there's no way we can get a minute entry out today. So
Thank you, Your Honor.
have to have them contact us. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One brief issue. Would it be possible tomorrow to end around 4:15? My daughter has a presentation at 5 that I would like to be at. And it's
Any objection to that?
No, Judge.
Okay, so we will stop tomorrow at 4:15.
Thank you.
No objection. Good dad. Good dad.